Hello, Riot Games, the most player-focused company in the world.
Hey, Riot. How you doing?
Hello, Monte.
So I wanted to talk to you about something. I've got this really good caster, and I hear you need some more talent for the North American LCS. His name's PaPaSmithy. He's Australian. He's been casting the LPL. I think you really should take a look at hiring him.
Yeah, the problem is, I've been looking at some of his players. Doesn't really bring the excitement I need from a caster.
I mean, he's casting out of his house in the middle of nowhere in Australia. I think if you brought him to an event, he'd get pretty hyped.
No. I'm gonna have to overrule you on this one. I don't think I could ever see him cast in one of the biggest leagues in the world. Right, we've reached the most important question of the interview. Monte or Jat?
I'm gonna have to go with Monte. I think he really understands macro and he explains really complicated concepts so everyone can understand it.
You're wrong, but I'll explain why.
Riot Games, I am so excited to finally cast my first World Championships. At first I was like, what was that? But then I was like, yeah, of course. I think it's time.
Yeah, see about that. I've looked at some of your work. I don't know if you really bring the gravity that the situation needs.
Gravity? Do you mean gravitas?
No, gravity, of course, you know.
All right. I will try to be more dense. Does that help?
Riot, I've heard you banned my team from the North American LCS. Can you show me some evidence so I can at least defend or explain myself?
Evidence, schmevidence. Evidence is neither here nor there. What matters is you're not banned from casting.
You sure about that? So I could just wait and hear from you later?
Yeah, I'll see you when I see you.
Okay.
Not that I'm going to invite you anyway. So. Well, reckon that's the last we'll hear from any of those guys in League of Legends.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Nines Summoning and presented by AT&T. I think episode 87, but that's really irrelevant because you're watching the episode anyway. So I always tell people that doesn't really matter. It's not like a sequential show, is it?
You told me you hated lore when I talked about Senna, but we showed the lore of how summoning Insight at the Cloud9 studios presented by AT&T came to be.
Okay, you told me you hated Law when she did that bad interview that you didn't really like.
What?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about something else. Anyway, but getting back to the show, sorry, that was in the green room, man. Sorry, we're live. Right, yes. So on today's show, we're going to have some big-time guests. Riot didn't want them, we'll take them. It's DoA and PaPaSmithy. So I do that, so it's like a morning time show, whatever. So yeah, they're going to be on the show, basically. So
and like you said, playing Riot, and they never saw us again.
Exactly. If all I'm saying is, if Riot wasn't playing, that would just be Worlds, wouldn't it? It'd be like the most all-star cast ever. People don't realise how much crazy talent's come through League of Legends. A lot of people. Yeah. You actually add the list up.
Yeah, they drove many of them out.
But enough about that. Right, anyway. We will also, as usual, be having our Discord segment where we take your calls in the Cloud9 Discord. As always, there's a questions channel. You've heard the spiel before. Go in there, post your question. We'll pre-screen it. Monte, basically, during that segment, will bring the person who's going to answer the question into the chat. He'll unmute them. They'll know. We'll say hello. They'll start talking. So fairly obvious scenario there. We'll obviously have all the memes and stuff coming up later. But speaking of changing things up, one of the topics that we harped on a lot on this show is actually a piece of news which is tangential to Worlds but not directly involved since Griffin's now been eliminated, which is that Griffin obviously fired their coach CV Max before Worlds. A big topic we talked about a lot. And then there was the whole drama of during Worlds, the players were coming out with statements and CV Max was coming out with statements. And then the director was coming out with statements. And then, like, was someone going to get fired? Was someone going to get rehired? And then obviously at the end of it all, I mean, you saw it went for Griffin. It wasn't great for them. Seems like the community is back on TV Max's side. And now it's announced he joins King's Own Dragon X.
So Korean community actually knew about this for a while. There's like a Korean underground website where people will talk about stuff and you post anonymously and you can get credit by like leaking stuff, right? So like this person has, clout.
Basically, yeah.
So one person with previous clout from leaking stuff before said CV Max would be going to Dragon X. And they also leaked that.
How long ago was that?
About a week and a half ago.
But it was after the drama.
I saw it online.
Okay.
And then like it lived in the Korean community, and then now it got a.
But this wasn't why he left Griffin, for example. It wasn't connected to that.
Well, he left Griffin for a different reason, and then he got a lot of offers. He just had offers.
Of course, like why wouldn't you make this guy an offer? He ran this Griffin team from what? challenger into one of the best teams in the world with a
Exactly.
legit shot at winning the world championship in a year and a half.
What do you mean, Monte? Didn't you not hear Director Cho? That team was going to be great anyways, and he was just along for the ride. And he's very
we'll find out
lucky.
now.
No, the funny thing is, jokes aside, and that is what we will find out. That's the interesting thing about this move to me, because I would actually draw the analogy between Steve Kerr and CV Max here. They both took like a young squad no one expected anything of, made them absolutely the best, but very quickly though, unfortunately, not much build-up time. And so the real question people always say about Steve Kerr is he actually the best coach? No one really knows, right? Because he's had so much talent, it's hard to evaluate. So the problem is, the time you really find out how good someone is when they have to work with lesser tools. Like in this team, Dragon X is not Griffin. Like they have some players that are decent, they have some players that aren't that good. So I think now we'll get to see is CV Max a really great coach? Because in Korea, we almost never get to see the coaches move.
I mean, I think Loco Dogo especially would agree with you with that example, because he would insist that anything the Golden State Warriors do, it's always the coach that's the most important part, right? It would have been a terrible mistake for them to fire that coach.
Don't worry, they made playoffs that year and they didn't get 10th twice. Wait, I don't think that's quite how it went.
The problem there, Loco, is you've set too bad a precedent of being not smooth at jokes that when you actually nailed it there, you did a good job, didn't he? But you did it too well, so we all didn't know where like the joke was. Like, 'cause I liked it actually. In the end, when I look back, it's great. In hindsight, it was a great job.
So if I do it badly,
learning.
I mess up. If I do it great, if I do it too well, I also mess up. So I just have to do it well enough.
I think he's figuring out the formula. Monty, watch out. Update the formula. Update the formula. Ixnay.
So
Give me a break.
I have a little bit more rumor on the Dragon
Okay.
or Dragon X thing. So this same leaker confirmed that they will have the same top, the same jungle, and the same AD. Remember, these are just rumors, but this is what the rumor is, that they are going to keep top jungle and AD. Support Tucson is actually talking to 4 LCS teams, according to the leaker. And then the mid they're going after is BDD. So if they can get that team together and find the different support that can slot into
But
that
they'll
team.
keep Deft, definitely.
Yeah.
So they're going to reunite
That's the
BDD
rumor.
and Deft from KT, basically.
That's their rumor, and that's what they want to get done.
That's
But-
not even a bad lineup, though.
Yeah, but the rumor is kind of bad for me because there's also rumors about BDD going to staying on KT, going to Kingzone, going to RNG, going to EDG. So online rumors are just what they are.
This guy
online
gets
rumors.
around, doesn't he? Man alive. Sounds like he's doing a good job in the negotiating room, doesn't he? He's got all these offers at once. He's just playing everyone against each other.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. Well, should we have DoA come on now?
Let's do it.
I think we're done with the CV Max part, so we can welcome DoA.
Makes worlds again. Just like old times, guys. SKT winning a wall. We left League, went to do Overwatch, but I'm back, and now they're
Oh, yeah, that's right. Move over.
in the finals.
I have some bad news
Yeah.
for you, DoA. I have
What's
some bad
that?
news.
It's all move over.
I mean, they're playing against G2. I mean, European teams. We know how those are, right?
Yeah, I have some bad news. SKT actually hasn't won Worlds since we stopped casting League of Legends.
What?
I know. 2016 was the last time they won.
Who won it? Like a Chinese team or something?
I know, it's crazy, right? Chaos Style was victorious in the end.
You're trying to make me like a Chinese could win worlds. That's like saying like Samsung could win 2 world championships.
Don't
Like,
worry. No.
what's this crazy talk, guys? Come on.
My expert friend Thorin, when Samsung made finals that first time, he
Here we
told
go.
me that roster got really lucky and they would never be in finals again, let alone win Worlds.
It's because I actually did do a tweet that did say that. I did do a tweet right after they lost the World's Finals. And I even said exactly that. I said, this exact lineup will never make another World's Final. They actually won the next year's Worlds. So, like, listen, you can't get them all right.
I was
Sometimes
really
your
happy.
takes are
I
too
was-
hot, Thorin.
Yeah,
You know
I
that.
know.
I was actually really happy to see, Ambition get his world championship.
Sure.
Well
was
deserved.
adorable. Sure.
And I have been sort of paying attention to League of Legends over the last few years. So I do know the situation right now.
Do you ever get that feeling? Because I know even in CS, where it's a game I'm still totally active in, like sometimes there is the event where when I'm at home and they're asking if I want to work the event, I think, that's not that big. I don't have to be at that event. But there will be times where if I watch the event at home, you get that fear of missing out. You get that feeling of like, I kind of should be there, like even if you know there'll be all the downsides, you have to travel to the country and there's a part of you just thinks like, it's kind of whack to just be sat watching the event. When I used to be right in the center.
It feels
Do
weird.
you get that when Worlds comes around?
I mean, I only did 1 world, so not really
right,
that much.
okay.
But
Yeah,
like,
hence the joke that we were sort of referencing in the intro there, guys. Yes.
Which is a real conversation that
No,
DoA
that's actually
had.
crazy.
Well-
I'll tell you why, DoA, because I always say this in
was
CSGO. So in CSGO, for
we
example, a lot of people don't know that Anders and Semmler, who are the iconic CSGO casters, I think together only did something crazy like 2 major finals ever, even though we've had 15 majors. So again, they're actually underrepresented from what people think. People might naively think like you and Monte did like a bunch of the world's finals or something, but you never did any of them, right?
no, we never did any. The most we did was like, what, a quarter? We didn't even do the
Yeah.
semis. Yeah.
I
We
was
did a
on desk.
quarterfinal.
I was on desk for
Right.
semis.
But we
All
didn't
you got was a
cast it,
quarter.
yeah.
That's like, brother, can you
Yeah.
spare a dime? Like, give me a break. I got more than a quarter. Don't you get a semi?
The thing
Ever.
is, and the thing is like we got to cast at the time before Korea started like losing worlds for some reason. We got to cast the best teams in the world every single week.
Yeah.
No, that's
So
what
like
I love,
basically,
though, is that they would
So
have these
I feel like we
worlds.
still got a lot of good matches.
No, but think how
Look at
brutal this
that.
is.
Yeah.
They would have worlds where the semi would be 2 Korean teams, and they'd be like, right, and over to Rivington, Jat, and Freak. It's like, what is this? Who's this combo? Like, no offense to them, but there are some more qualified people for this particular game.
We were the 2 Shens as well.
It's all right, you know.
Even that's gone dub. No more blind pick.
I saw
mean, that's
that's
already gone
true.
for LCK
Well, that,
technically
yeah,
anyway,
that went
yeah,
before
true.
we stopped casting.
True.
Yeah, but at least 2 Shens are still alive and well in Nico's champion spotlight. So thanks, Freak. But yeah, that's there. Yeah, we had some good times. Was that when Kled was coming into the league?
Yeah.
that was like a mysterious thing where it's like, who's this dude? And we thought it was like this lizard. We didn't know it was going to be a lizard.
Yeah,
with
that's
another
when
Yordle riding him.
they were making Kled, and they just walked up to us and insisted we
Right.
put that on
my God,
the,
Chobra.
on the broadcast. And this is Kim Carrier's show.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that and
that's
Kenny
right.
May.
Yeah.
Wow.
The makeup girl did a good job with you there.
We look angelic.
You all look like someone's using a Facetune app on Instagram or
true.
something. What's
It does look
Korea is mental. Look how
Facetune app
look how
or-
nuts that is. It looks like they're actually editing it like live.
Facetune app or Korean
Monte
broadcast
looks like they had
makeup,
the like
that's
baby
the
app
thing.
where
Yep.
you go all kawaii. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Put some blush on me. Definitely don't remove the dark circles from underneath my eyes, though.
No, it gives you that intensity, that gravity, if you will.
Has watching Worlds this year shown you, like in contrast, what was different from the days when you were doing all the time? You were heavily involved. There's been things that were different.
I mean, the big thing that's different really is that it's not just Korea anymore. You know, what I mean,
Sure.
like China was always like kind of right there, right? And Europe like had their sparks of brilliance. NA is basically the same. But all the other regions
We have more
seem
money
to have achieved. Well, there's always been the money, but like
More
besides
money
that,
for less
like,
results. The esports strategy.
There we go.
just hashtag NA. But no, I mean, all it seems like the other regions have achieved a certain amount of parity between Korea,
Sure.
China, and Europe. That there are like good teams that can compete. G2 has a real chance this year, right, and all that. But I almost forgot. I do have a special surprise for Loco. Something that I made for you long ago.
Oh, God,
that we
here we go.
sadly never got to put on any sort of merchandise or
Here we
shirts,
go.
but maybe there's a chance
It's gonna
we
mock
can
you,
bring
I
it
believe.
back. I
Fine,
know
yeah.
we've got a graphic for this.
Come on.
So we could see it.
Let's see what this is.
This is something I put my blood, sweat, and tears in to Loco. I've been assured that we have
Any minute
a
now.
graphic for this.
Be here
and I
any
don't
minute
have
now.
an in-ear. So if someone's screaming, no, we don't have the graphic, we don't.
No one
I'm
said
not
anything.
hearing
So
that.
I think it's going to come in a second. It'll come in due time.
There we
Oh
go.
my God.
There we go.
Why?
That is not, by the way.
You remember that?
That is not a 14-year-old girl from SoCal who's posting on her Zanga blog. This is actually Loco Doco.
That's not.
He's had the,
biggest
he had the hot streaks in it, everything.
You were going
There
through
This
we
was
your.
not in my contract.
He was going
There
through
we
his,
go,
his
there you
Big
go.
Bang phase right there. A little very G-Dragon at that point. Yeah. But Crushed Hearts and Broken Dreams, that graphic
His
has a
emo
blank
screamcore
background. We can put that on a piece of clothing whenever you want. And
He's
would've-
giving you the beautiful logo he made for you.
Here's what
I'm
would be
here to
next
talk
level.
League of Legends.
Loco, you
Well, we
are
are
going to turn
talking
that into
about-
your sub-alert, right?
that should be.
On your
This is-
stream.
This is how you make this
at the
merchandise next
text.
level. To make it next level, what you need to do is on the sleeve of the hoodie, it has to on the bottom of the sleeve have the fingers doing that. Remember he was doing like
Yeah.
he was doing like the
We need it coming out from the O's on the side.
I think you should give him
Because
the
on that-
Photoshop file because if we can get an animation where like the wings flap,
Yes.
then he can turn it into
can do
a
that.
sub icon.
He should have his own
like a
section.
sub graphic.
Yeah.
I do. The funny thing is, I do actually have the original Photoshop file. Somehow it survived like 3 PCs ago, and I still have it. When I was coming on here, I was like, I wonder if I still have that from like 2013 or something. And thankfully, I
You should
did.
be grateful. That kicked off. If you guys didn't know League of Legends at the time, so the original tweet was just him saying "crushed hearts and broken dreams" and like doing this. And so basically, everyone in League of Legends on Twitter just did their own selfie saying "crushed hearts and broken." Dude, it was a great
in case you're
meme.
wondering-
Dude, that's viral marketing for
In case you're
yourself,
wondering,
Loco.
I actually
Why are you
referenced-
embarrassed? That was amazing.
I actually referenced exactly that incident during one of the many years. I don't even remember myself which year TSM went out of Worlds. When they went out, I did one of those.
That's why you're here. Your marketing prowess is what has brought you so far. The first time I ever met Loco Doco,
Yeah.
we were watching a match at the OGN studio and you introduce yourself to me as the best AD carry in the world.
Damn right.
And at the time, I think there's an argument to be made for that. But times change, and now you've got to stick Loco. So. There you go.
You're taking your Riot role way too far there.
That's great.
A little bit of method acting, yeah.
I thought you'd be the nice guest. We already
I am
have
the nice
two bad cops.
I'm bringing back these great nostalgic moments
exactly.
from over the
You
years.
loved that.
Yeah.
Let's talk World 49.
Loco, your favorite thing is being the center of attention. That was one of the most.
In a good way.
That was a good way.
That was
I couldn't
not that
find the
good of
Nick
a way.
Allen is handsome logo, though. But I did find that.
What do you mean? It was
My
fantastic.
favorite thing is letting other people shine.
No, that's definitely not true.
No, it's what you used to do as a pro.
Oh, no.
He's very self-sacrificing, you know. Here's
did
a
kind of
question
say
then, along the
yourself.
lines of
Sorry.
like things that changed. Do you think that like has the game changed? Like the meta, is it more like you were obviously famous for like the bloodthirsty supports and stuff? Support's a super strong role now. Do you like the way the game is at the moment?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, a lot of the hook supports seem to really be back again. I mean, you see a lot of.
You'd have been
Thresh,
loving Pike if it had
Blitzcrank.
been in your era, right?
Sure, like Pike would be super fun. Nautilus is still around, right? I haven't seen much Nami, which is great because she irritates the crap out of me. So shut up, Nami, for old time's sake. But yeah, no. The thing that's been really interesting when I found out I was going to be on this is I really started watching League again and like really like thinking about the games and analyzing them while I was watching them, and I had a ton of fun doing it. But while some certain aspects of the game mechanically have changed, like turret plating, stuff like that. You don't see as many lane swaps per se as you used to. The core of the game still kind of endures, and you still see these teams kind of stylistically go to these various camps that existed when I casted, where, especially if you look at the semifinals, I mean, FPX versus IG was like hyper crazy dive team fight, most kills in a match at Worlds ever, and then you had G2 versus SK Telecom, which was very, methodical, calm, quiet, more like traditional Korean, quote unquote, League of Legends, but now I think we would just say good League of Legends.
Yeah, sure.
Right, but yeah, so I feel like things have changed, but overall the core of the game has very much remained the same, which is a good thing, I think.
So one thing that you said regarding like SKT playing similarly to their did before is something that plagued Korean League of Legends team. The game changed so much in the last 2 years with turret plating, with vision being very
There's a lot
limited.
less vision now than it.
And there being a lot more upfront damage.
Yeah.
Europe and China adapted to that, and now we get styles like G2, FPX. Korea still stayed the same, and that's where they lagged behind. They didn't adapt with
Do you
changes.
think it's because the Korean teams didn't need to rely on like crisp team fighting as much because they could just kind of choke people out?
No, I think Korean coaching staff and Korean like culture in terms of listening to your elders and the veterans, like they do what's right in season 4 and 5 still to this day, and they really didn't adapt, and they have this pride about Korea is the best, Korea playstyle is the best, and it's been really biting them in the butt.
Well, the
It's
turret.
clearly not for the last 2 years at this point.
The turret plate thing changed a lot too because it rewarded so much early aggression in dives. Because if you get the kills off the dives, then you get that gold, but then you also get the turret plate gold a lot of the time as well. And so the laning phase, super important, and you can't just sort of play passively and wait for the opponent to make a vision mistake because you just won't get turret plate gold under those things. Like you just have to play more aggressive. And there's so much gold wrapped up into those turrets in the early game right now.
It seems like just people are just more wealthy than they used to be.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
Yes. The pace of the game has been accelerated a lot.
Yeah, put it this way,
and-
the old concept of where the mid game is like doesn't exist anymore.
10
The
minutes.
mid game could be like 15 minutes into the game now.
And when I towards the end of my League of Legends casting time, I didn't really play as much because I didn't really enjoy like the 10 to 15 minutes of laning phase. I liked the team fighting. I liked getting in there and fighting with people, right? So now I kind of like I've actually been playing a little bit again with some people, and it's fun because it does feel like it's a little bit more action packed, early on than it used to be, and yeah, I think that's from my personal enjoyment of the game, I like that.
So Riot 100% agrees with you, and they actively made changes for the game to be more exciting and for there to be more action early.
Doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, you look at, I think one thing that Heroes of the Storm did really well is that you fight from minute 1 and there's always action going. And while, certainly there is nowhere near as much strategic depth in that game, it did have the action thing that made it, I think, a lot more playable than League was at the time. So it's good to see League kind of accelerating things a bit.
Yeah.
See, no one knew that on this show, the hottest take to ever be uttered would be DoA, essentially implying that Heroes of the Storm was good in some certain ways in
Hey,
esports.
I really
That's a
like
very controversial
playing
take
that
in esports.
I like, I have a lot of problems with Heroes of the Storm. Obviously, group leveling, no, please, let's throw that out. I do like that you play on different maps, and I do like that it's action from minute one. Those are two things that really appeal to me in that game.
Fair enough.
I think the best thing that Heroes of Storm did for esports is really push the collegiate side with Heroes of the Dorm.
That is true.
I think that's the best thing they brought.
All right, we're not going to talk about this.
Full disclosure, I haven't played Heroes in years either.
I'm vetoing this topic.
But one thing,
Anyway, about this League of Legends game.
one of the interesting pieces of information people might have seen was released was they announced that the G2 SKT semi-final had on the one hand like broken the viewer record, but specifically without Chinese viewers added or something.
Yes,
which in
is very
itself, the way you would phrase it, again, notice with data, it's not the data, it's like how you present, like why did you choose that filter?
Sure.
So I will say that angle does make it sound like maybe it didn't break the overall record, and if you'd added Chinese, 'cause I'm guessing China probably didn't care as much about no Chinese teams, so I don't know, it sounds interesting. It's mainly more about the Western side, isn't it?
And also, I think the site that records that, ES Charts or whatever, they don't have access to the Chinese numbers for whatever reason. Like
Truth
a lot
is,
of
most people don't. But
I mean, the Chinese
just says them anyway.
We're not going to get into Chinese numbers because like they're probably lies anyway, regardless.
It's all very ambiguous.
Yeah, let me just,
viewership is
the real story is just
more
the
impactful.
Western viewership. It did break the record in season 9 of all times. You know, many years into the game.
Which includes like many other large events like TI or the Boston Major for CS:GO, which was up above 1 million viewers. But this was nearly 4 million viewers, which is absolutely insane if you think about it, not being not including China at all. Because those are probably real numbers.
From what I remember, the record in CS:GO I think is like 1.5 million or something.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
And that's a massive Western game, So that's more than double. Yeah.
It was a great series too.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, personally, I enjoyed the other one a little bit better because,
What?
More kills. Dude, that was so much fun. Like FPX, like just getting in there and executing flawlessly nearly every team. I could watch that all day. I could have watched 10 games of that.
Well,
we'll get into
but
it.
There's probably some
I'm back, guys.
probably some LPL jobs for you.
Yeah, well, anyway.
There's not a lot of them going around nowadays. I can confirm.
Don't start rumors, Monte. FPX
Dylan moving to Shanghai.
I am I like SK Telecom, right? But I will add FPX to teams that I am a fan of now. They were a lot of fun to watch.
And hopefully you've gotten denser over the years. And
I've tried.
I can tell you my mass has increased since I came to North America. As you can see in the
I was going to say,
videos.
that's, I think we both increased in mass.
I'm pretty
US,
sure your
food
headlines
diets will do
definitely
that
did
too.
increase.
No, it's the same. It can't actually increase in mass more than it already is.
True that.
I'm feeling pulled towards it right now.
All right, so in terms of the viewership, really interesting. I'm curious to see if that carries over to the finals now. Obviously, I think a lot of Western viewers, the Korean viewership will probably be lower. Many Western viewers are also fans of SK Telecom, which is probably a draw to that match given their history and Faker being the most famous esports player in the world.
I mean, in theory, the Korean viewership should be great. Don't you guys want to tune in and learn how to play League of Legends? Yeah, maybe you could win one in the future if you
could be the next Faker.
Yeah.
Come on, you can watch.
Take notes.
You can watch your countrymen, DoA and Gimgoon.
Right.
Listen,
those guys have been grinding.
Good
for a
news
long
is,
time,
guys, someone Korean's winning worlds. Just saying. If I were you, I'd even use the same angle I used last year, which is since last year was basically just Rookie and the Shy hard carrying IG.
Yes.
I was like, did Korea really lose worlds? Like, those guys are pretty Korean from what I can tell, and they were pretty integral to winning the tournament. So whether it's Doinby or the guys from, G2, oh yeah, that's right, just the G2 angle they won't be. But if Doinby wins, you can cheer for a Korean still.
One thing I'm super curious about
cheer for one.
in like the viewership number, and I'm surprised they didn't include Chinese viewership numbers, is I'd imagine SKT is like number 3, maybe even number 2 in terms of popularity in China, including Chinese teams. They've been around for such a long time, and whenever Faker has his birthdays, like the amount of gifts he receives from Chinese teams or Chinese fans is insane.
The thing is, though, to be fair, to put some context on that, I will say also the problem is, much like Korea actually, what China does is everyone bandwagons the really popular team that succeeds. So obviously in the same way that CJ used to be huge but is nothing now.
Yeah.
Obviously the problem China's had is they also really bandwagon the big team. And if you notice, all the old teams have gone now, aren't they? Like WE's way gone, OMG's way gone, EDG's barely relevant. So I actually think, sadly, in their scene, imagine if NA just had totally different changing winners every 2 or 3 years. It wouldn't have been TSM for 10 finals, would it? It would have been, actually, I think that's probably hurt their viewership a little bit in some senses, because it does matter. Everyone knows it doesn't really, even though to me the players are all that matter, not the team name. You have built a fan base under that team name. So if you build it up for OMG or whoever, you want to retain that.
Yeah, it's much easier to get back into watching something. It's like, oh, TSM, I knew them. Are they still good? versus like
The
who
answer
are
no.
these-
It's nearly always no,
forever,
actually, in
so.
case anyone's wondering. The answer to that question is not rhetorical. So,
Well, Thorin's still the same.
Some things never change.
exactly.
So in terms of the semifinals, like you said, you enjoyed the FPX IG one more.
Way more.
Is it just because
Way
SK team
more.
lost?
No, well,
I mean, you just like all the
okay,
team
that's
fighting.
probably part of it. But no, I just like team fighting. I just like matches. I've always liked matches with a lot of action, and that match had objectively, I think, the most action ever in a series at Worlds. So there was 59 kills in one of those games. It was game 2 or 3. I can't remember which one it was, but it was just so insane. And it wasn't
game 2.
It wasn't just that there was a lot of fighting. It was that the fighting was done very well. It was done very crisply, no pun intended with the support player for Fun Plus Phoenix, but it was just executed in a way that really makes your jaw drop, right? It wasn't sloppy, it was just good. And
Well, speaking of that player, by the way, I actually think that Crisp guy has been one of the absolute best players on FPX.
Chris was making so many great picks.
What a great player.
Like that guy, I mean, and I'm pretty new to watching Fun Plus Phoenix, obviously, but he seems like a hook hero god. Like, he looks so good.
Yeah,
I like how they just run the multi-hook compositions too.
It's
which is
great, I
hilarious.
know. This is League of Legends the way DoA wants it to be played.
Exactly.
His
Every
champion pool
Full of hookers.
That's well, you know.
and blackjack.
No comment. I'm vetoing this conversation.
His champion pool has been almost exclusively hook champions: Nautilus, Blitzcrank, Thresh. I'm surprised he didn't pull out Pyke versus Tahm Kench, because that's like the really good counter. Tahm Kench is relying on his shield to be tanky. Pyke can actually kill people through shield with his ultimate if they're under a certain amount of HP, so that one was a little bit weird for me.
There was a great moment in that series where Tahm Kench on IG, I forget who it was, he ate his AD carry to protect him, and then they both got Blitzcrank grabbed over the wall. And I'm like, just as a Blitzcrank, you're like,
The only problem with that
Feels so
series,
good.
this is why, if I had to guess, like why people were so shocked by your statement there, because I actually think both series had a lot of entertainment.
They were both
especially in
really
content.
good.
But I think I know the real reason why people were, like, they don't seem as hyped about the FPX IG one is because the way the game was going, it looked like the Shy was going to carry game 4 and we were going to have a game 5. So I think everyone feels like underwhelmed because he then,
I
like,
suppose.
even though he was carrying the game, he then also single-handedly threw the whole game and then the series was over. So, like, the difference is the G2 one was just back and forth the whole time. Like, I also felt on that one, like, I'd love to have seen that game 5.
I mean, the G2 SKT series was a lot, it was more like traditional, you know, pushing lane management kind of League of Legends, but I felt like, and maybe it's just me, but I felt like there were a lot more little like dumb mechanical errors in that series than there were in the other series, and that like bothered me. That made it less fun to watch too.
So for me, why I really disliked the FPX series was the game 2, when we talk about clean fighting, the Baron sequence where they fought with like 3 people and they're not resetting properly. It is so important in the meta to reset properly. Like everyone reset at the same time, make sure your support gets worse, everyone's playing pink worse. And they broke so much rules and so many just good fundamental like League of Legends basic macro stuff, so it made me really pissed. And then the other thing is I thought IG played really badly to their draft. So IG drafted stuff like Lucian, stuff like Jace. They drafted a lot of win lane, take isolated fight champions, and they just opted into FPX's full-on 5v5, like Kiana, Nautilus, Rumble. These are not champions you want to be team fighting versus, but
Yeah, they kept giving
they're just so
Kiana
willing.
for some reason.
I also love the fact that we saw that obviously these teams have a history of playing each other in the LPL, so that always creates weird matchups where you can have upsets potentially. Not to say that this was, I predicted IG to win, but what I loved about FPX was that, especially game 2, when they see the Shy on Vladimir, you're like, oh shit, you gave him Vladimir, can't have that happen. So then they just pick Mordekaiser, and then they just like pull him into the underworld, Shadow Realm every fight. I'm like, well, if you're just gonna delete him, the best player on the enemy team from the game, like he can't AoE people if he's just 1v1ing a Mordekaiser. I thought it was a really cool game plan, and we saw the Mordekaiser bans after that too.
This series also, by the way, if someone hadn't watched much of FPX, shows you who Doinby is. Look what he's playing. He
played Nautilus,
he's
what,
playing
3 games?
Rumble, which had like 10 kills on, by the way. He played Nautilus 2 games.
3 games.
3 games, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, that's a ridiculous champion pool. No one has that champion pool.
Well, man,
like,
if you-
like earlier, we referenced on the last episode that, like, it was on Listen Loco, that like Nemesis had made some comment about Doinby where like he wasn't a good player. or
worst
something.
mid out of the
And
top
it's like,
4.
what's funny is he doesn't realize that actually just says more about Nemesis. It implies Nemesis doesn't understand certain team concepts. Because if you look at what Doinby's doing, he's obviously not doing anything a traditional mid laner does. But what an amazing player.
Well, if you want to talk about like how the game changed, go back to that. Man, like some of these, like Yasuo, Gragas bot lanes, this did not exist. Like Nautilus mid, no, we never saw that then. So it's been fun to see kind of those heroes where if that would have happened back in 2016, be like, did he misclick? Is this another Cloud Templar tribute game? Like, what's going on here?
I also think there's an aspect to Doinby is he's really unique. No one plays like Doinby. No one has the same kind of champion pool as Doinby. No one has the same skill set. If there were more players like Doinby, I actually think he'd be much easier to play versus. But look at the game where he picked Rumble, for example. Rookie picked Syndra into it. I don't think Syndra was that great of a matchup into Rumble. Rumble's so tanky. He can keep the lane pushed. He's not mana gated. So it actually ended up doing not much. But if that's like a common matchup and there's more people playing like Doinby, then I'm sure Rookie would have had a better pick prepared.
I mean, ultimately, it doesn't matter what your picks are if your team keeps walking through narrow jungle paths.
Yeah, exactly.
Rumble
So,
Kiana
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, for me, the real
was
problem with that game is like, literally don't walk into the jungle
They
in the
kept doing
mid-game.
it.
And they just
It was so
got
funny.
like 3-man equalizer in the jungle and then Kiana ulted. Like, I look at their composition, I'm like, okay, so you got Quinn, you got Syndra, you have Varus. Like, you're setting yourself up for a 4-1 split push, right? And you're trying to poke them with the Varus and Syndra off the tower. Just stay in lane. Don't walk into the jungle and just wait. Instead, they just fed the ever-loving crap out of Doinby. He ended up with 10-1 and 5.
I love
Of course he's
that.
going to destroy you. I just thought that was a titanic failure of Invictus Gaming
was
on
so
executing a game plan.
It was so funny. Like, oh, they're going through the jungle again. Why are they doing that? They've got the ults. Like, they're going to get wrecked, and they would.
I didn't get that at all.
Also, another player that we have to talk about is Shy. I actually thought he disappeared this series. Like, overall,
Well, they forced him to disappear sometimes.
Very, very literally disappear.
he made him disappear. But even when he's playing matchups like Quinn Renekton, like he's giving Gingun opportunities to like flash engage on him and like get chunked out completely. And CS was actually even for the Renekton Quinn matchup, which is not normal. And which is not normal, especially for a player like the Shy, who's been one of the most dominant top laners. So I actually was kind of disappointed because we've been seeing so much exceptional play out of him, and we got so little of that this series.
What's brilliant is I kept making the point on this show that one of the reasons he's been so absurdly good compared to any other top laner is when he gets kill, I understand why it's in the meta. Like, he's amazing on it. Well, he even himself threw that last kill game where he he literally let himself die without even ulting himself. Like basic mechanical errors, you know, where
He was stun locked.
Sure.
There was a lot of good ability comboing from FPX in a lot of those fights. Like, I think the last couple ones, there was somewhere I'm like, all right, well, a reasonable human being probably couldn't hit their ult in time to do that anyway. But I do agree with you, too, that like he was just in a weird position compared to the rest of his team in a lot of those late fights, too. But yeah, he had issues. But that just happens sometimes at Worlds, it seems like. You know, a player just sort of like mentally self-destructs and you never really kind of know who it's going to affect when, you know. And unfortunately for the Shy, that seemed to be his time, you know.
I also think it really shows how strong and cohesive the FPX unit is and how well they follow their game plan. That I actually think that LWX player is probably the worst player in the final. Like, I think he's been underwhelming as hell this Worlds. Like, I haven't seen a lot from him individually. But it hasn't
does his
mattered.
job.
It doesn't matter at all in their team. Like, they have a great support player. They play around the map. They know exactly which priority lane to play through first. Like, they cover all his weaknesses. It's not a problem.
I think the big fix that they did for LWX with me is obviously we remember him feeding his brains out on Kaisa to start Worlds in the group stage. But what has changed is now he just waits for the poke damage from, or he was just waiting for the poke damage or like the engage to come through. And then now he's the one who's following up on a lot of this rather than trying to go in first. So I think they just like said, okay, play a little bit more passively here. You don't need to just all in at the start of a fight. And it's a pretty minor change, but he doesn't have to be the hero here, especially when they're running these compositions that are so insanely focused around single target CC. His job is literally just to right-click on somebody a lot of the time.
And I'll say as well, obviously we'll preview the final later, so we'll talk about some of the FPX players there. But one thing I have to say from watching this particular semi-finals is we commented how amazing it was that IG even was able to win that series against Griffin because like they basically don't have a support and a jungler. And this series here shows you like that there's a reason why those roles are called such important roles because arguably the two best players on FPX this tournament are the support and the jungle, and they're killing it. And this is a good example. Like you control the whole game if those guys are on the map.
Doinby is the best mid laner at enabling junglers because he plays so much melee champions that sets up ganks really well and that are kind of supportive. And Tien is the best jungler at the tournament, and the two really complement each other nicely.
Besides Clid.
I didn't say it might be above him.
Yeah, I think
Really?
the performance
I think it's a good-
shown,
we can
I
make
would
that
put
debate.
him above Cloud.
What we'll do is later on we'll have a debate about who might be the MVP. So we can talk about some of these names then. So let's talk a bit about the other one then, G2 versus SK Telecom. Because one thing I want to get out of the way at the beginning, because this is a very interesting topic, and I noticed because a lot of the talk shows in League hadn't happened yet, I haven't heard this topic discussed. So a lot of the analysts on Twitter seemed to get really annoyed at the implication that the series went like this. SKT had big leads, they were leading all the time, and then G2 fought their way back in and just broke the game up and stuff. Whereas actually, I know a lot of people feel as though this is a good example of a series where the draft's a bit misleading, the gold lead's misleading,
Yes.
the towers, the barons obviously were mega misleading because I think SKT got 12 and G2 got 1.
No, it's 5 to 1, I think.
There we go.
over the-
It doesn't matter if you get a Baron if you
6-1
immediately die right afterwards.
Yes.
Then guess what? The Baron buff's gone. So
I think what was really brilliant to me about this game for G2 is that their lack of Baron priority was because they were knocking down turrets early. So they would have an open inhib while they were taking Baron on multiple occasions. Just go kill the inhibitor and then push the waves. And what are you going to do? Because oftentimes, if you actually watch this game, I was rewatching it this morning, this entire series, and at 25 minutes a lot of the time, SKT will have only killed 2 or 3 towers, which means even if you can get a Baron, you frequently can't end the game.
Oh, you won't be able to.
So there's two factors to this.
You need a
First
whole team
off,
wipe.
SKT has been bad the whole tournament using Baron, and second off, if you only have 2 or 3 turrets down at 25 minutes and you have a Baron, even if you were good at using Baron, you probably can't end the game right there. So really, to me, this was, you can sort of think about this series, but to me, this was G2 being absolutely brilliant at creating map pressure, where they literally made, or not literally, I should say they almost literally made Baron irrelevant.
They basically had, literally to this point in time, nobody in League of Legends actually knew at the moment that you could just do that over and over and over again. They understood something fundamentally none of us. SKT didn't understand what was happening.
So I want to start with the Baron point. I think we have to credit G2 for counterplaying SKT really
Yes,
well when they had
agreed.
Baron. But one thing I said it previously again and again, SKT is garbage at using
Yes.
Baron. They spread out into 1-3-1, they try to maximize farm, and they try to get maximum amounts of turret. And I think it actually comes from playing in LCK. LCK, the teams are so conservative, where if the enemy team gets Baron, they're like, okay, they have Baron, let's let them take turrets, let's just wait out Baron, let's defend that inhibitor. And because teams are so conservative and they roll over, teams are just so used to it, that being the norm. But G2 and a lot of the Chinese and the European teams, whenever the enemy team gets Baron, their go-to is, okay, they have Baron, if they get into siege position, we're gonna lose a lot. So before they can get into that position, we need to open the fight on them, and we need to make sure they can't take our turrets. We need to make sure they can't farm all 3 lanes. And they're so aggressive. And that's kind of what showed. SKT was very conservative with using Baron, and G2 was very aggressive whenever SKT did get Baron.
I mean, it almost felt like G2 came in knowing that SKT was going to be weak with Baron and just said, let's not fight Baron. It
was almost like a rope-a-dope.
Yeah, it was almost rope-a-dope. I actually thought G2, if anything, people should be, I thought this series was phenomenally played by G2. And if anything, I think people should be saying, wow, look at how G2 changed the way we view Baron in a best of 5. No, I'm dead serious. I've never seen
coming into this tournament, one of the complaints I always made about League in Season 9 is I hate the fact that Baron is it's not just a win condition, it was basically the win condition. So I always thought that sucked actually about the competitive player. That whereas in the past someone could have said, I'll give up the Baron because I can take, I can trade for this turret or something people never did that most of this year.
So,
well, they did a really good job too of always making sure that Caps was in a position farm-wise and strength-wise to split push away from things too, where it's they would trade that inhibitor or something like that, or he'd be dangerous enough on his own that you wouldn't want to mess with him. And then SKT would just take a fight in mid and die.
I think it's actually just unique to this series where SKT's garbage with Baron, and if it's another team that has Baron, G2 can't do the same thing. SKT is just really careless and really conservative, and they just weren't ready to get punched in the face. But one thing, I don't think G2 was under prioritizing Baron. They were just behind in terms of team fighting strength, and they realized they couldn't team fight, so they found creative solutions. Like what DoA said, in game 1, Caps' Rise got extremely fed, but they're still weaker overall as a team, and they can't team fight. So they're constantly forcing split push situations, so they don't have to team fight.
Yeah, and they were but they were taking objectives with it. I mean, they were just playing a faster tempo objective game. I know, I think there was, Jat was casting this series, and I remember him saying a lot, and I agreed with him that they just looked sort of lost. You have to be so decisive in this, World Championship for League of Legends. even if you spend 10 seconds sort of milling around, you can totally throw.
There's the
pressure.
area. If you had to nail what G2 is the best at of any team, it's like they the fastest at assessing the situation and making a really good call.
Yep.
Because I actually think one of the flaws in this meta is people think like the old days of like SK Telecom of old, that you can always make the perfect like
playbook,
theoretical
yeah.
decision. Whereas the real problem in current league is you can't really do that. You have to kind of go with the play that's like good enough, because I'm just going to pick it now. Like I've only got a second to pick.
Yeah.
Like that's why actually this series here was so telling to me, because SKT in theory, with the old sense of the word tempo, had all the tempo. They were in position in agency, but it looked as though it was G2 did, because G2 would instantly respond and it would always be the correct response.
So in game 3, I think this shows more than ever. So Mountain Drake right now is extremely powerful because, as we talked about, Baron is extremely powerful, and Mountain Drake allows you to murder Baron so quickly. So second Mountain Drake is coming up, most teams in this situation where if they're kind of weaker in team fight, they would be like, we have to take this fight. We can't give them 2 Mountain Drakes. G2, give them the Mountain Drake. We're going to go 4-man dive top instead. And Khan was not ready for that at all. Like, they're taking solutions where the solutions just aren't really there. And most teams would just opt into the team fight, even though we aren't that favored. They're so smart. I think behind all the flex picks, behind all the trash talk, G2 is secretly the best macro team in the world, and that aspect...
I think that's definitely true.
Yeah.
I feel like that aspect of G2 just doesn't get
No,
talked
it
about
doesn't.
enough.
Yeah,
No,
people,
that's what I'm saying.
people over-prioritize the skirmishing and stuff.
Think about this for a second. Think about this. If I told you that before we started this match, or any best of 5 at Worlds, that one team was going to take 5 Barons and one team was going to take 1, and the team that took 1 Baron was going to win that series 3-1, that sounds inconceivable.
And then people would
That sounds
debate-
actually crazy.
And then people debate if the team that had the Barons ever had a real lead, or whether it was an imaginary one. Yeah, it's a game changer of a series.
One thing that was really interesting to me with that series too is that it seemed like after a while, G2 started leaving picks open for SKT that seemed really strong, but they kind of knew that SKT was off their game mechanically, and they wouldn't be able to deliver. And you see that in Effort's play a lot, I think, especially. And then Faker's Kiana just like made me hurt inside with like the number of ults that he was missing.
This is what a good guy
games and stuff,
Faker
right?
is. Faker saw what happened to the Shy, and he goes, I can't let that guy just let that career down and throw a game at
What
the
a
end.
guy.
He goes, I'm going to throw a game I wasn't even carrying, because that was outrageous. Like, again, think about the history of Faker. So one of the topics we've discussed on this show is that coming into this Worlds, Faker was actually probably the hardest player for people to, like, basically gauge how good he is.
God, is
because
that-
too many people were trying to go on the old narrative of, you know, like, what if he gets to his old level or something? Like, even though
Which is actually not possible with the game.
It's
the
not,
way the game
yeah.
is balanced.
But even
actually not possible.
though at this tournament generally he already hadn't been close to that level, that last game was almost astonishing to see Faker just literally chain feeding in
it
Worlds
looked like
to-
he
to
didn't
lose
even
a
know
Worlds.
how to Kiana
it was
worked.
Crazy.
Yeah, he had the wrong elemental buff like half the
Yeah.
time. I mean, again, like there would be like a wall here and his enemy here, and he would shoot the ult like that way, and then I'm like, dude, just the wall, hit terrain with the ult. That's what you got to do. But
So one of the most powerful aspects of Kiana is your guaranteed route when you have water element. If you EQ someone, your Q will follow them regardless of if they flash. And when he was roaming topside, he started with ult and the Ornn flash, so he had to flash to catch up, where if he started with EQ and water element, then he would root the Ornn. And another thing regarding the Kiana and Faker playing Kiana, there's a lot of context behind it. G2 actually showed a lot of inability to play Kiana throughout the tournament. They played Kiana twice in groups. It was extremely shaky. Once versus Griffin, it was pretty bad. Once versus C9, that was probably Yankos' worst game. And then you go into the best of 5 versus Dom 1, they're permabanning Kiana. And if a team shows that with Kiana and kind of the uncomfortableness that G2 has shown, then SKT should open Kiana and they should be like, okay, let's see how good your Kiana is. They didn't do that at all until the final game, until game 4, the match point, and they're forced into Kiana. G2 didn't first pick Kiana. Oh man, like what do we do? Like we opened it and they didn't pick it. Like, do we pick it or we practice enough on it? What if we give it to G2 and they're good with it? They should have opened it since game 1 and seen what G2 could have done. I think it affected draft so much.
Well, they changed their entire draft strategy for the last game too, because they spent a lot of time, SKT in this series, banning Syndra, right? And then this last game, okay, we're just going to leave up the Syndra. We talked about this coming in for G2. Syndra and Yasuo, very dangerous picks to give to G2, even though SKT did almost win this game, to be fair. That was like a major concern coming into the tournament, and Those just slip right on by in that fourth game.
Being as people usually in the past have always been so harsh to Khan because he really was like a Dade candidate every bloody tournament he went to internationally. I've got to give him props. Despite SKT themselves not being the best, I thought he played much better than usual in this tournament. Like he definitely wasn't the best top laner, but he was a lot better than he has been in the past.
He crushed Wonder. Like, Khan was by far the better top laner.
I thought he did well.
I thought he seemed pretty good in lane, but he was very up and down as far as like team fightings went in that series. Where there was one fight in mid, I think in the last game, where for some reason him and Effort were just like a little bit down below everybody else, kind of near the river, and just got totally separated from the rest of the team.
Oh, no, you're talking about Baron.
That's
Yeah,
also
that was probably one of the Baron fights.
That was also the sad thing about this series, is like, this is also why I can't put it as like the best series ever or whatever. It's like the SKT didn't give their side, did they? Like, Faker chain feeding isn't the best series ever, I'm afraid, guys.
That was not
Similarly,
SKT at their best.
That was Effort, a guy who is basically on the world's level, a rookie, unfortunately crumbling in a semi-final. That was disappointing to see, I have to say.
I did think it was interesting that, and I think that the casters were talking about this too, but Effort seemed okay like the first two games, but for some reason, game 3, he just totally...
He just lost his...
He just lost it.
didn't he? Yeah.
Which, like, and so people will say, well, why'd you put Monte in? I think in that situation, you have to put him in.
Yeah.
Like, Effort he was missing all his Leona ults in game 3. He looked terrible. His decision-making was off. He wasn't with the rest of his team. So at that point, you're like, okay, we need the literal former MVP who we know, world's MVP, who we know is good in high-pressure situations. Like, he may not be individually the best player anymore, but literally anything has to be better than Effort. Just completely...
There was
He wasn't great.
Well,
you're saying you would have made a different choice.
No. I'm saying I think they had to put Mata in, but here's my problem with putting Mata in. Mata and Teddy hasn't been the best duo, and we talked about it before, like in the KT Super Team, there was a little bit of a power struggle regarding identity. Are we a bot-focused team or are we a top-focused team? Because they had Mata Deft along with Smep, and the end result was they became a bot-focused team around Mata, right? And in Game 4, they're picking Varus Nautilus. Every single time Varus has been picked at the tournament has been with Tom Kinch because he's so immobile. And Khan was a major carry player, and the team's focus shifted completely towards bot lane. Game 4 is Elise Kiana versus a Syndra without cleanse, and they weren't ganking mid until 15 minutes. Mata changes the identity of the team, so yes, you have to put Mata in, but Mata brings his own problems within this iteration of SKT. That's why they've been starting Effort. So it was kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situation.
Well, and then you had Mata walking way too far forward in the start of a lot of those team fights too.
Yeah,
he would just get deleted immediately.
Look, I'm not saying Mata played great. I just think, like, if I'm SKT, I make 100% that
I agree with you. Because, I mean, yeah, there was that one fight in Game 3, I think, in top with Leona, where Effort was, like, ahead of everyone else, and he just Leona ults, and then nothing happens. He's like, well, I guess that ability's gone for a while, and it's like, well...
I mean, he would just miss him in team fights.
Yeah, well, he would miss his Zenith blades a lot, and...
Yeah, so I think, like, yeah, it sucks. And I don't necessarily agree with the Nautilus pickup there for SKT, but that was a weird draft in that both Kai'Sa and Xayah were banned, I think, for the first time in that
One
series.
thing I'll say, though, just because I thought it was an amusing moment, was I actually enjoyed that Seb, who is one of the TI champions for OG, he was watching this game, right? And he even made a tweet, because think how bizarre this is to a Dota player. He was like, imagine if you're in the TI final and you lose one game and they just sub you out. Because in his game, that would be like, what? Like, I'm in the team. It's like, that's Korean League of Legends, mate. Yeah, they're in a different world. You're right. And that would be so brutal.
If you're going to sub
you're done for the tournament. If we win, it'll be without you.
Like, if you're going to sub anyone in, at least sub in a former world champion.
Yeah,
you know, there is a
Sure.
He also hit on precisely the problem with Dota, is that the players in Dota have way too much control over the roster. So of course, in their mind, why would we sub out a player when I'm the one in control of the team? So I think Dota could learn a lot. I think Dota could learn
That's
a lot.
why I actually agree.
Real coaching and decision making.
In terms of the
roster.
premise for this sub, the reason I agree with it is, like, I don't care in that scenario. Like, here's the difference, actually, I think, between East and West. In the West, what would happen is, even if you were thinking about subbing that guy, you'd go to him and you'd go, are you okay for game 4 or whatever? And then what would happen is, because everyone's seen every movie where you try to be the sports hero, every player, no matter what, would lie and say, yeah, coach, you know, give me a chance or whatever. But the real problem there is, if you saw a guy crumble like that, like Effort did in game 3, I actually think as the coach, knowing he's a rookie as well, you almost, it's actually your responsibility to take him out. You can't ask him to go and do something he's just failed to do.
Also, you remember the coaches can also listen to comms during the game.
Exactly.
So they 100% know if Effort was like
Well, whenever they
getting mentally destroyed.
whenever they like showed Effort's camera towards the end of that too, he would just be like super wide-eyed and just the poor kid just like looked out of it. And obviously he's a fantastic rookie player.
Yes.
But and he's got a lot of great years of League of Legends ahead of him, no doubt. But that was definitely a time to take him out, I think. Yeah.
The roles were flipped in terms of the West versus East for me, especially Korea versus non-Korean region. Like Korea usually has this like patience, coolness. Like it doesn't matter what happens in the game. Like we're gonna be more clutch. They're gonna make mistakes. We have the better macro. Like doesn't matter if the enemy team gets ahead early. We're gonna eventually win. There's a certain inevitability to it, and the star players are so clutch. It was like the exact reverse. G2 was so cool, like cool as a cucumber, making such critical decisions. Like when they're behind, like when you're playing versus SKT, and like Perkz and Caps, like these guys play out of their mind no matter what's happening in the game.
That's really interesting, actually, because one thing SKT was known for back in the day was being behind early.
Sure.
And then all the casters would be like, oh, maybe this is NA's time. But then, you know, we knew SKT would very commonly be behind in gold at 10 minutes, maybe even behind a dragon or something, and then they would just come back with exactly what you're saying, Loco. Yeah. So it was really interesting to see that kind of flipped.
Well, I think the panic resulted from SKT when they're like, how can we get so many Barons and keep losing these games? Like literally at that point, if that's all you know about macro, then you're like, oh.
You could almost predict a bad team fight coming after a Baron got taken by SKT at the end. It was scary.
Their understanding of what should happen after Baron is so exclusive to LCK. Usually it's, oh man, like we don't get to play the Korean teams. We don't get to learn from them until at Worlds, and then we learn so much, and then we have to go back to our bad region. It was the reverse. Like the Korean teams only play the Korean teams and Chinese teams during Rift Rivals and sometimes scrim them, but they never really get to experience like G2 League of Legends.
Yeah, but
I mean, what's crazy to me is like they've been in Europe for a month now. How did they not learn?
But that's also one area I feel like is unfair about this tournament. Is like everyone's now everyone's gonna be a hypocrite and do exactly what they did to the Koreans. So all the people who say like you shouldn't say like Korean style because they all had different styles. Everyone's gonna do that now to G2 and be like, can SK Telecom adapt to the way that G2 plays the game? No one can. You can't do what they're doing. Like you have to have their players. What makes their team crazy is they're making these shot calls that are from absolutely novel scenarios that they've never seen before.
Yep.
So as a result, like that's not even one person. I don't think Perkz alone's doing that. They have like a team mind aspect. That's another area where I could draw the comparison to the old school Moscow 5. It's like not only do you not know what they're doing, but you can't replicate it either. Like, you don't have their very weird idiosyncrasies and players that make that somehow work, you know?
Well, it's like G2 is like Neo from the Matrix, like where for them, like time slows down in these big moments and they make the perfect decision, right? Where for everybody else, time is moving at normal speed and you're gonna be like, well, what do you wanna do? And by then it's too late, right?
Plus to tie in what you said before, that was exactly it. Even if SKT didn't beat you in the basic macro game or they didn't beat you with players and laning, etc., they always had team fighting in their back pocket if they needed it. Yeah. The problem is right now, G2 has team fighting in their back pocket against any team they play in this game. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, the two best carries.
It's outrageous how good they are in those fights. Like even in this particular series, we didn't even talk about it, but some of the times when they could just take like 4v5 fights were ridiculous. Like their sense for knowing if they can win the fight is insane. Because when I watch IG do the same thing, sometimes I can tell they don't know that because they just lose the fight. And they're just gambling. They are coin flipping, you know. G2 know like the coin's just double heads. Coin flip all day.
Another thing that G2 keeps doing is they do things that Korean teams just aren't experienced versus or don't think is possible. In Korean teams' mind, Renekton is first pick worthy, Renekton plus Elise, Renekton plus Talia. You should be able to destroy everyone. G2 prevents that, and a key factor of them preventing it, I realize, is the Rise pick, and it's what Caps does. A big part of it is you get the kill initially, and then you're able to dive it over and over again topside. But you can't do that if the mid laner is consistently missing and the mid laner is consistently putting up pressure topside. There were mistakes made on Convent, but in game 3, where they had Renekton versus Camille, and they got the early kills on Camille, Caps still did a really good job of disappearing off the map to make sure the Rights couldn't go up there to also dive the Camille over and over again. G2 just is better than Korean teams in general, and SKT wasn't able to adapt to what G2 can do.
And I'll give you another reason, since we've got the topic on screen here, what makes G2 so dominant. So same conversation, but we'll pivot a little bit. I'll say one thing I've got to add in is like the collective player strength is outrageous in this team. Because, for example, like earlier in the tournament, in the group stage, I thought like Mickey X was doing terrible, for example. He was doing really badly. Well, what happened? Caps just hasn't had like almost any bad games, seemingly. Like he's had none of those int games. So anytime, like even though it sounds like a cliche, anytime someone has an off game, another player really does just step up in his place. And they've just got, that's the other thing. They're the only team I've ever seen in League where like even though like for example the IG team in theory can say they're a triple threat, you still know which lane they want to play through. You still know based on the pick where they're going to go. G2, it's really hard to know that even in the draft, even after the draft. It's, like they really can go anywhere they want in the game. It's up to them.
Except Wonder.
That's true. We do from his, I guess. Yeah.
So we talked about offseason a little bit before this whole discussion started, and we talked about, teams will say all our players are actually the best, like we love all our players, and as soon as the offseason starts, nope, this player's gone, nope, this player's gone, nope, this player's tradable.
Watch out for Fnatic after this one, just telling everyone. Just have a little tip there, pro tip for you.
For G2, they can legitimately say that. Like throughout this year, like we even like bashed a little bit on Wonder, but in spring, he was one of the best players for G2. When carry tops were prevalent, like Wonder was amazing. Like throughout the entire year, you can go back and point at times, oh, I remember when Mickey X was the best support in the world. I remember when Perkz was the best AD. I remember when Caps was the best mid laner. I remember when Jankos was the best jungler. They can legitimately say all their players are some of the best in the world.
There's something else I'll throw in as well. Like, first of all, as a team, because they're all so good and they're all on the same page, they are insanely self-sacrificing. People will just give up like lane farms, just go and do a skirmish anytime. It's not like those teams where you can really see like this guy saying, no, I'm going to get this wave before I come, and it delays it. And then secondly, like, how outrageously good is this team at wave manipulation? They're also one of the absolute best at setting up the map state they want. Like, I feel like that's an area where I think even some of the best teams in the league still don't do that right in Season 9.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, I think, one of the most difficult things to do.
Oh, it's very
as a
difficult.
team.
Yes, exactly.
yeah.
It's obviously, although I think you need the whole team to be aware of this constantly, yeah.
Right.
Because you don't have set plays anymore, everyone has to understand conceptually what needs to be done whenever you do like a 5-man play across the map. Whenever one person roams from mid lane to bot lane, there has to be top lane pushing out top and then covering for mid lane. And as bot lane resets, you have to reset along with the bot lane and decide we're going to go together, and you're constantly making decisions. There's a problem put in front of you. You have to figure it out as a team, and you have to make the right call overall as a team, and you have to do it really fast again and again. And G2 does that again and again correctly.
That's why it's so fitting that the last game he played, possibly ever at Worlds, from Mata, was against G2. Because it's like, if we go back in time 5 years ago, mate, you were the one who invented all the new stuff, who innovated. No one knew what you were doing. No one could catch up in that tournament. Well, welcome in 2019. That's another team doing that now, you know. You got to see the full circle. Yeah, exactly.
It did
He's
feel
the
kind
old
of
guy
like,
now.
it did feel kind of like a passing of the torch a little bit, so to speak, didn't it? Yeah.
It wasn't a very voluntary passing.
No, it was
more like a stealing of the
a
torch.
seizing of the torch. Yeah.
It's more of like you kill someone and then you're like taking their stuff. Not
It's like looting
there
the
you
body.
go.
It's more like that movie we were watching the other day, Highlander, right?
Yes, exactly.
There can be only one. Yeah.
There can only be one. You
More
kill
like
them
cutting the
and,
head
you
off
take,
of
and you take their
SK
power.
Yeah. Or it's more like if the guy like cut his own head off, basically.
Okay, right, so we've got now, we're going to show some of the highlight clips from those semis. We've got the stream of the crop coming up now. So, let's see. That's loud, okay. So the first one, as far as I know, is going to be like 4 kills from G2. Let's have a look at this one, if you remember this. And they catch them just on this little bit below where the river brushes.
Perkz is there as well. Now Wonder's in the pinch. Caps is just getting cut down. The wind wall is not going to mean a thing.
And
Oh,
SKT does
yeah, this is the Kiana ult lift from Faker,
Yes.
where he's separated in that last game. I mean, this was just a terrible engage overall from SKT. Like, the Hemo play got like 1 or 2 people.
It only
Well,
got
Teddy
one
and
person in
Effort
Syndra.
also got Teddy and Effort also got separated from the team too. There was something, I forget what it was, but there was something that happened that kept them up a little bit farther in the jungle and unable to join it.
Dude, look at how well G2 understands their role on the team. You're an Olaf, you see the Varus without a Tahm Kench, the amount of patience and the amount of pre-planning you need to have to not ult and just rush straight for the Varus. You know Kiana's behind you, and you know your only job in the fight is to zone out the Kiana. Jankos knew that exactly. He didn't rush for the Varus. All he's doing is zoning Faker.
Which he did on multiple fights in that game, by the way. Sometimes not to the greatest effect, but yeah. I mean, the setup here is just so terrible. Like,
Oh, it was the Ornn ult. That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kept the SKT bot lane from really
Did
getting
a good
their
job
ult.
with that, though. Like, actually, on Ornn, I
Yeah.
thought Wonder was like underratedly good. He was pretty good
Yeah.
in this game.
I think Wonder had a lot of good Ornn ults in this game.
Right, if we move to the next one, this is actually an SKT one. This is where Clid did the epic dragon steal into a big team fight, if you remember. Because this was like out of nowhere.
it is important to note that on this steal, this is the Lee Sin steal, right? Yes, he was like 3 levels up in the jungle, so his smite was significantly more powerful.
That's a good point.
In game 2. So it was going to be hard for them to secure this if you're G2. Also, this was a Hail Mary to just try and win the game when they had
Yeah, it's
basically
10-20.
lost
Didn't
it.
he paired paired it with the Gragas burst too, didn't he?
When you look
Yeah.
back now and you see what it took for them to win one game, it's like, man alive, they were never going to win this series, SK Telecom, were they? Like, even in this...
They almost lost this game.
Yeah, there was still a bunch of times where G2 was almost winning the game they even lost.
So this is a game where they pick LeBlanc Lee into Rise. Traditionally, Rise counters LeBlanc, not the other way around, but this is the game where they're like, okay, we believe in Faker, we believe in Clid. Even though it's a counter matchup, we're just going to
It
go
worked.
for that.
The old
super strong
narrative worked.
2v2.
Oh, Clid had a sick like flash Lee Sin ult too.
Yeah, on Perkz.
Again.
Yeah, so and that was, I mean, Faker was super fed in that game.
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, they really had trouble closing even with getting these inhibitors down. They had lost, I actually think they probably would have, even if they hadn't gotten that steal, they probably still would have won that Drake fight. But I applaud G2 because they never go down easy, right? They're still going to try and win no matter what.
They know the highest chance they have of winning this game, even when they're behind, is at Dragon. It's not at their base front of Nexus after SKT gets Elder.
Yeah. So we do have another one, which is the Fun plus Phoenix. So switch series now, temporarily.
This was like the exclamation point on this whole thing, wasn't it?
I think there's already more kills in this game than there were in the entire SKT G2 series. Already at 50.
This game is ridiculous.
It was.
That's also, I think, the reason why. What was great about this series was it really rehabilitated FPX's rep, because coming out of groups, people were so underwhelmed. Sure, they beat Fnatic, but I think a lot of people actually think Fnatic was probably a bit overrated in this tournament. So this series here, you just went head-to-head with IG and did all the skirmishes and fights they want and beat them at it straight up.
I think
very
it's
impressive.
Better execution.
I think it's so hard to crack the base when you're playing against FPX's comp, because if you're walking into them, the Tahm Kench can save Bunny. You're going to get rooted by the Varus ultimate. You're walking into gangplank barrels. Like, how do you go through that choke to kill that inhibitor? It's super difficult. Like, you just get blasted on your way in. And even if you can dive into the backline, the Tahm Kench is there to save whoever you want, right?
So you know how this team is so coordinated? If you have ProView, watch ProView from Doinby, and I don't want you to watch like the actual game, but just watch his cam. He never shuts up. And from what I've heard, he even says stuff like, okay, we need to ward here, this person flank from here, we're going on this person
Now
doesn't
breathe
have
in
flash.
air, take a certain percentage of oxygen, not all the nitrogen. It's like,
Don't forget to blink.
give me a break.
This is like the story of Reaper at that IEM.
I am Cologne 2012.
Yeah, it's the first version of SK Telecom where he micro.
Buy a cloak. Oh, you bought the Negatron cloak? I meant the Crit cloak.
Basically, he treated that game as though he was playing StarCraft.
Yes,
with his other
but that was actually
At
true.
the time,
that was actually
where
true.
most people had experience.
Because it was Mightily and who was his
Road or Raven? I forgot the
Raven and
AD
Starlast.
Yeah.
Raven was in the bot lane, and he Reapered famously was just like split pushing with Vlad top or whatever, and he was just hard microing his teammates to the degree where the story is he told him to buy the cloak, and so his Kog'Maw bought a Negatron cloak on a back.
Hey man, sometimes you're worried about that magic damage coming
For obvious
in, you
reasons.
know?
Like, imagine not having a brain to that
know.
degree.
Right.
And he still won this tournament, by the way. He didn't
won,
lose
yes.
this match.
Hey, Reaper is a top mind in esports. You know, but
The crazy thing is, Reaper but got criticized for his mechanics, right? Like he fell off in terms of mechanics. We can talk about Doinby having bad mechanics, but in the scope of like professional players, Doinby's still up there. He's just
Sure,
not
yeah.
rookie. He's
Right.
not
Yes.
Faker. He's not.
He's
Chill
not.
like
He's
a-
not actually a solo carry. Basically, he's like a team carry. Isn't he?
you know, sometimes mechanics will carry through, and sometimes shot calling will. You know.
Sure.
And he's found a way to make it work, obviously,
Yes.
with his mid lane pool. All right, let's take a look at our last one. Number one, which is G2. The last fight, it was the Perkz Quadra,
Comes out in such a close exchange. For now, they're winning, but Perkz
which also has to be set up with the fact that he was very behind on this Yasuo
Yes.
in this game.
Faker is gone. Teddy's next on the list. There's no way.
Killing Fakers kind of turned out to be not so hard this game. That's a good start.
Can he do it? It's not enough. They've done it. They're gonna lose.
And I'm still trying to wrap my head around the idea that Yasuo Gragas is a bot lane. There are no AD carries in bot
Also,
lane
by the way, I'll just go ahead and say this. Since this year, I'm one of the people who tried to be more like tempering the Perkz hype. I will say, that's actually a context that everyone's forgotten. Remember, this is the first year the guy's played AD carry, and he's only like bringing out his mid lane picks in the bot lane in like semi-finals of world championships against the greatest players of all time, and carrying like he's not even having bad games here.
Also, even on
Nice
the AD
clutch.
carry, he had some great Xayah games in
Yeah,
this series,
he is
too.
the best Xayah in the world.
Yeah, he looks
yeah.
super good on Xayah.
That fight too, like a great exhaust, wind walls timed exactly where it needed to be. Like he could have died like 2 or 3 times in that fight too before he got his like 2nd or 3rd kill.
Yeah, let's actually talk about
Everything
what
was
Duncan said. Like the expectation for Perkz starting out was like he'll be a decent AD carry, but he'll have great pocket picks. Okay, he's a good AD carry, but he's carried by his like non-mage picks.
Yes.
And now he is just the best AD carry in the world. it went from like people just kind of trying to like bargain with themselves a little. There's
I don't
no
know
way-
about in the world, but he's very good, certainly.
I think there's a case for him being the best AD carry.
He might be at this Worlds, but I think Death's better than him personally.
As traditional AD carries, but the role has changed so much, right? And we don't get to see Death play in this environment, so it is hard to say.
I want to save the Perkz side because I know like PaPaSmithy is like, Perkz' biggest fan.
Fair enough.
But we do have to get PaPaSmithy on this show, so I
understand.
I'm sorry, DoA.
I understand.
Oh my God, I thought I was going to get
We'll
kicked.
make way for the guy who's actually still casting League of Legends. I see how it is. It's been a ton of fun, guys.
Yeah, it has been fun.
Am I just supposed to leave? I just got
No. So where can people find you?
Oh, well, you can follow me on Twitter at GG_DoA, and then you can follow me on Instagram at DoA Games because somebody already took GG_DoA for some stupid reason, and I can't get the account back. But anyway, DoA Games on Instagram, GG_DoA on Twitter and Twitch.
And you're streaming tonight, actually.
I am. That's right. Well, that's on Casters and Castles. That's right. Make sure to watch that. Some Dungeons and Dragons action. I play a half-elven bard. What else? I play a didgeridoo beautifully. And it'll be a lot of fun, so definitely watch that. It'll be at, I believe, 7 p.m.
At Casters and Castles on Twitch?
Casters and Castles on...
It is actually really fun to watch.
Caster Sand Castles. Depends on how you want it to be. Yeah, Casters and Castles. Yeah.
Different show entirely.
That's, normally...
That'd be a prediction show.
See, I'm imagining this, like a young Vidius has just made an amazing sandcastle, and then Jack just comes and stamps all over it. He goes, I'm the one who builds the castles.
I was going to say, that's where Loco plays...
a nice sandcastle
That's where
fight.
Loco plays D&D and gets bullied, is the Caster Sandcastle.
We should play D&D together. It'd be great.
No,
We should... opportunity here.
I'm not that sort of nerd. There's limits. There's limits.
Yeah, you don't
to
even
that.
like
Well,
Harry
I
Potter.
am, and you can find me
Exactly.
at Casters and Castles Twitch TV.
That's right, in a few hours. In 4 hours from now.
That's right. It'll be
You can
wonderful.
watch it. All right. Well, thank you for coming on the show, DoA.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We're going to take a look at On Cloud9, and when we come back, we'll talk to PaPaSmithy.
The thing that motivates me while playing League and like drives me to win is, I think, one, family, because I've been, how do I say, like I give up on a lot of stuff, like back home, like marriages, or like some people passed away, or like people got sick and then like I cannot be there and stuff. So I just feel like I just have to be the best of what I do, or else like even leaving those things behind are not worth it at all. And yeah, just making my family proud, I guess, because I know that every time I lose, I get sad, but I know that my family always gets sad too, because they don't like to see me sad, I guess. Losing is a thing that I usually don't think about. I usually always think about winning, because I'm not a loser, So yeah, I think just making sure I give my best and not deceiving anyone is one of my top priorities.
I think we got the better draft today against G2, and we're going to smash them.
This lane with his kleptomancy, only having to burn the pool even after Blabber has gone for that. So the early lane phase for Licorice's Aatrox definitely tricky.
Oh, let's put him back in. There's decent damage. Wonder's running pretty low on HP. He could flash the wall. Does choose to. Does Licorice follow?
He can get him.
Is this enough? Impaling kills him for Wonder, though. He can get the heal. And now the bottom side sneaky goes down. Zazel can't land the anchor. It's traded to the top side, but that is still overall advantage G2.
Perkz and wow for Licorice.
Here we go.
That, just like last time.
And the storm over the top, the big root coming across, though. I don't know if they have the damage. Not going to sneak. The feathers do come back, but it's one traded, and Mickey is on the wrong side of the map. He cannot walk away. The anchor's too big.
What are G2 doing right there?
Looking for a re-engage now. Can C9 do anything to stop their base from falling? 24 minutes in, Baron buff on the squad. G2 do not know how to slow down into this one. And here they go, on to turret number 1. 5v5 to close the game right now. Sneaky out of hell, 2 for 0, 3 already picked up, making a 4th. There is no chance at all. Cloud9 are deleted. G2 with 2 stompy wins so far in the group stage. And one of the tournament favorites takes care of business.
The game overall, I thought we were doing decently for the first 15 minutes or so, and then they kind of just snowballed really hard on us afterwards. when they just grouped, they just kind of killed us all and just ended the game. We lost one fight top and then snowball from there, and then we lost the Baron fight. So they quickly ended it. Yeah. And then today I'm playing again versus Griffin, and hopefully I can get my first group stage win.
Hope so. I don't know, Griffin is an interesting team, I think, because they have really good individuals, but I hope today we do beat Griffin, because if we beat Griffin, then it's gonna be not easy, but easier for us, because then on the rematch, they will have more pressure than us, I'm pretty sure. And I think this win is really important for our mental as well.
Imagine that this ping pong table is League of Legends, and Nisqy is, well, he's still Nisqy. Every time a new patch is released, the game changes. That's why Cloud9 have partnered with Microsoft. Using their technology, they can understand changes faster, so that no matter what the next patch brings, they're ready to own it. Ping pong ball did not actually penetrate table, physically impossible, but we left it in because it looked awesome.
Welcome back to Summoning Insight, the Nines, presented by AT&T. This is Cloud Connections, also brought to you by AT&T. And with us is my dear friend, PaPaSmithy.
It's good to be here.
You're on a short hiatus.
It does feel that way. It's a short hop.
From Worlds, you going back?
Yeah. Worlds, 100 Thieves business, back to Worlds. I fly in 2 days' time, maybe less than 48 hours. So it's gonna be a lot. So back again on Monday. So I'm just Mr. Jet Lag over here.
Oof. So we know you have a big announcement to make on this show about the 100 Thieves roster.
That's right. There will be one. I promise. We will have an LCS roster, an Academy roster, ostensibly players. Yeah, that's all we can commit to right now, I'm afraid to say.
Oh.
No other hot leaks today. That's for a different show. Hopefully my show, but who knows?
Do you have a show?
I mean, we have content. There'll be content. I filmed 2 things today, so fingers crossed, they're both coming out. Otherwise, who knows?
So what you're telling me is in the future, you're going to have to invite people to appear on your content, and then you're going to have to put up with them, turning you down, make excuses.
That's right.
Right, well, in that case, the karma, you know, the hens have come home to roost, haven't they?
And if I do interviews, I'll release them faster
Right,
than 2.5 months later.
Hold on. Listen, everyone says that at the beginning, but whether they can do it, though, that's the question.
Oh, it won't be me personally. I got
There we go. That was my mistake, mate, trying to actually do it myself, exactly. I should just have a team of people who do these things, you know.
Now we're thinking 100 Thieves way, baby.
That's all right. You could just hire Thorin for next year.
Oh, I'll work out the budget on that.
We'll see how that one is. We can make the numbers work.
So, obviously, we were, when you and I were hanging out the other night, you were talking about, oh, well, in this Reflections interview that I did with Thorin, I couldn't actually talk about this new job yet.
Sure.
But now we can do an interview with you where you can actually talk about your reasoning behind moving from casting to now becoming a general manager in the worst major region of League of Legends.
Wow. It's the new best region. Fingers crossed.
Are you fixing it?
I mean, I'm trying.
Look, Bob, I was going to tell you, I tried to fix it one time. It didn't go great.
Well, that was 5 years ago. So who knows? Aren't we bound to repeat the mistakes of our casting forefathers?
Basically, the results are the same as 5 years ago, though.
Monte, I tried to fix it once. We won a world championship, kind of.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Who did you beat again? Where were they in China at the time?
You beat the 12th best team in China. Anyway.
I think they were 11th.
Oh, sorry.
And then we put on a historical performance at MSI. It was historical. People still talk about it to this day.
Absolutely, yeah. Rich Orgathic.
Anyway, so Messiah of North America, PaPaSmithy.
Look, I'm not willing to own up to that. I think for me, the big decision was, what's after casting, and does there have to be something after casting? I didn't really know the answer to that.
I too have that nihilism.
Sure, and it's a struggle because I still love casting, right? And I'm sure you still get a kick out of the amazing matches we get to do as we got footage on the screen of very old days, Christopher, you and I.
That's right.
It's my first broadcast at OGN.
Was it?
Yeah, many years ago. Moving on to more recent days, you can tell.
Newer exes.
But
shout out.
It was really, casting is something I still have a deep passion for, and it's still a space that never has kind of a ceiling. You're never done developing as a caster. You could always get better. But it was one of those things where last year I cast the World Final.
Yep.
I was on, 9 LCK finals in a row. Like at some point, you're just adding on things rather than finding new ways to innovate. And so that's where, with kind of peers like Deficio and yourself and people just moving around and shuffling, it was seeing those sort of things happen and going, okay, is there something out there for me that I could try on and that actually would sound good? And I get pitched a lot of different ideas and things. There was the Origin head coach job last year that I became very close to picking up, but ultimately didn't feel like my skill set made 100% sense for that. And then this year when it came to 100 Thieves general manager, I had to understand what an esports general manager is or could be or should be and kind of work out if the fit was there. And I guess I was in a privileged position where if they pitched me and I was like, wasn't feeling it, like I could just be an LCK caster for another year. Like there was no pressure to be pushed out, but it feels like there is a role that kind of my skill set makes sense in, my psychology background into the League of Legends knowledge, wherever you kind of come on the knowledge level, like I can still be a BS checker for kind of the top and the bottom in terms of like what corporate wants around a League of Legends team and what League of Legends players need from a team. And that's, the kind of genesis of the opportunity here is just to add value.
Along those lines, right, one of the things I've noticed from knowing industry people is a lot of people are very interested in exactly the type of job you're doing now, like general manager, or obviously in the past, like coach was the closest thing to it. They didn't have a lot of other org positions. And one of the reasons why, though, I know a lot of people are interested in it, isn't necessarily that they think it's a great field and they just want to be a part of it. A lot of people who are industry people think that, like, because that role barely exists in most teams, that it doesn't exist. Like, it's needed. Like, most of the people aren't very good at it, or they're the first crop of people doing it. So was the notion, like, essentially, like, you must on some level think you know better than other people if you're going to do this?
I think it was just one of those things where not every team needs a general manager. Specifically, you look at Cloud9, and Jack, for example, is very involved on the league side. And so someone, like if Jack wanted to step away and focus on other things, like theoretically a GM could fit there, but as it stands, they don't need a GM. And other org owners who are still super involved, I think that makes sense there. If you're pivoting away or if your focus is in other areas and you want someone to take on a project at every level, and that was my pitch to 100 Thieves, was every single level of the org I want involvement and eyes on rather than just like my core competencies, because that was kind of the interest there, was to be more than just one role, which was caster, whereas GM is such an umbrella term that it's kind of hopefully going to be lots of learnings in many different directions.
Well, years ago, when League of Legends was just starting to see that Korean dominance, people would always ask, okay, so what are the factors in Korea that are really leading to their level of success in esports and in the scene? And one of the things that I always brought up was that many older players or coaches had sort of evolved with the scene, were in their 30s or 40s and had already had a decade of esports experience. So they were coming out of a player background or they were coming out of a coach background.
Call me old here.
We're getting old, Papa. I don't know what to tell you.
We're boomers, it's true.
You got gray.
Officially boomers.
You got gray in your beard now. Actual, literal gray beard. So.
Grandfather Smith.
Hey.
Anyway,
doesn't like those apples,
my point was like, we didn't have anybody in the West who had been in esports for a really long time. And so there were a few people, but there wasn't anybody who was like moving into team leadership positions, right? So I think that that's one of the actually really valuable things that we're starting to see now is people with enough years of experience as a pro player or, team manager under their belt starting to really be able to shine at that level.
And it's a bit of pressure because when it comes to this kind of sports GM mindset of what this GM role is at 100 Thieves, I'm not necessarily a forerunner, but there's not a lot of people. Like I think Parth is probably the most comparable person, Danon as well. And I've had conversations with both of those, but it is really early days, and it is almost a proof of concept on if I come in and it's in no manner a success, whether we're talking
Deficio
results or development, and Deficio as well. It is kind of a proof of concept, and I do feel like if we can actually make some inroads in talent development or results or whatever kind of sphere you want to evaluate it on, it's very real that there might be 5 or 6 more of these jobs in each of the regions.
In 10 years, we'll all just have our own teams, and that's how we'll continue our... What we'll do is to continue
You can have it too, no one else wants...
I'll let you talk to Reggie.
Basically, we'll just battle like through our proxy warriors of these teams that we have, and that'll be how we'll battle our egos.
I just recorded the Origin podcast, and it was Spawn, who's the GM of Order, Deficio, GM of Origin, and then myself at 100 Thieves. So already the 3 of us 2 years ago were sitting at tables, during events and just shooting the shit. And then 2 years later, we're all GMs, right?
So I want to talk about something. I'm not going to get too into the industry weeds, but I just want to bring this up as a concept because I think it's very interesting that so many top tier casters, like at the apex of the profession, are kind of leaving casting. And I think that is worrying, but also I think it's a problem kind of within the industry that it is very difficult to get career development as a caster once you reach a certain level of success. I think what's happened is we've seen like Quickshot do very well by taking some level of creative control and management over the LEC, but for the most part, in my experience and talking to many other casters, you kind of feel like you hit a dead end at a certain point in time.
But it's not that uncommon for casters at the top of their field, especially the analyst or expert casters that sometimes are broadcast, sometimes are on a specialist show, to transition to teams and then transition back. Like that does happen.
Oh, sure.
And it happened in the NFL with Gruden recently.
And the trend of the people you're talking about is mostly the color casters, right? The analysts are getting opportunities. But I think it's also potentially super humbling. Like there's a real chance I come in and bumble through this and fail, and then that's going to be very much a reality check on my analyst persona. And there's a chance that the qualities that people saw, because I interviewed for months and went through a lot of, it wasn't just a, hey, do you want to do this? Yep, let's go. It was a lot more intricate than that. I'm hoping that it's more than just I sounded pretty smart talking about League of Legends on a stream, and it's my background, my education, my peers kind of talking about me. Like
maturity.
I don't think maturity, hopefully. So I'm hoping all of that works in my side. So I don't think it's just, go down the list of color casters and take the next most statured one. But if it means more opportunities for casters to try something different, I think that's great. And at the end of the day, there is some concerns on my side that it is only analysts, and we haven't necessarily replenished League of Legends with kind of the next crop of analysts. Like I guess Ender and EU is probably the only other name to talk about there, and it's kind of one every 18 months.
That's not a problem, though. That's what I don't like about that actual aspect is it's very different if someone comes along and they compete with you and then they become better than you, and that's why they take the job. When someone just leaves who's in the hierarchy and everyone just bumps up one, that always is a weird transition.
But think about this. Like literally think about this. These people who we're talking about, including yourself who had left, if there was a more compelling offer from continuing to colorcast, you would probably do that. The issue is that for many people, the offer is not compelling enough.
Here's what I'll say. For me, it wasn't about money.
It doesn't have to be about money.
You're right. When I say
direction,
that sort of stuff, I guess, yes, there is definitely some sort of like, you could take over the LCK broadcast and everything was run by
a production role or something.
And have a production role. Like maybe there is another. And maybe that's something that comes in a few years. That hasn't really been the way it's gone for esports broadcasting so far in the big leagues like LCS and OWL. But for me, it was really thinking about things a bit more clinically, like what does my CV look like? What does my resume look like? And I've got the psychology job.
Sure.
Then I've got broadcaster, which...
Sounds like your CV's maxed. So it works out for you.
Yes, I'm a Dragon X. But at the end of the day, the idea of, and when you go to the next thing, and I'm not saying like esports collapses and you need a job, but more like when you think about what that's building, it's not necessarily building in a direction unless you just want to do broadcast forever. And at some point, I'm going to be too gray and people are going to get the hell off the TV. And then I'm going to have to try something different, theoretically. And in that case, the idea of being a general manager, most people kind of generally know what that means. Like it's a pretty good thing to have on a resume. And the fact that it challenged me on a pretty fundamental level, but also like many of my competencies rather than being eloquent and understanding the most immediate meta, that's where I was just like, okay, that's where I want to go. It doesn't mean I'll be there forever. Like, who's to say I'm not slumming it on an LCS broadcast in 3 years' time, begging for a job? Please, sir, can I have one job? But for now, at least, this feels like a natural fit.
No, I agree.
It ended up being an either or because that's how life goes. But to me, it was just I need to try this, and the offer was super compelling to try and make a change.
So we talked so much about general manager. What does the role actually entail?
Yeah. What does it mean? How are you? Like, what are your goals for it?
How do you envision the role?
I just actually recorded a video on this.
All right.
Eating my own content.
TLDR.
I mean, the TLDR is basically, and I said this in my first opening interview, is my vision of GM is that if you Google 100 Thieves League of Legends, I was involved in all of the results there, whether it's roster construction, staff, content, branding. Absolutely.
And get credit at the same time.
Absolutely, and that's something I'm willing to put out there, and you have to. Your good name is something you have to.
So you're going to be very
front
front-facing in that regard?
Yes, so like content, we do the heist, for example, and future content potentially, and I'm happy to step up and be the voice there. Allows more time for the head coach to focus on the in-game stuff, and they'll be involved where it makes sense. There will definitely be some broadcast stuff there, but it's very much an umbrella term. And in terms of like how I see my days going after off-season, because obviously for off-season, it's hire all the right people and get them in the right place and organize a boot camp and all the kind of mechanical things. The idea is that once the procedures are running, I never want to cannibalize the role of someone I hired for. So let's say, okay, I'll come and walk in and watch scrims today, and I don't know if that's going to be probably all the days at the start and then a little bit less as time goes on. I'm not going to sit there and be the peanut guy being like, the peanut gallery at the back being like, what's this crap draft you did, head coach, and like emasculate the coach in front of people. I'm much more going to be...
Imagine someone doing that, eh?
That'd be weird.
The plan is to observe, make notes, and then in a one-on-one afterwards, kind of come back and just try to add value to the people I hired. Because if I hired the right person, it's a lot more about polishing a gold statue and making it better rather than like, I'm actually this and this and this.
That's the way I definitely handled Renegades as well, is that even because it's a problem because the players in our position, when the players know you know the game very well, if you go in there and you start to undermine your coach, then you lose all authority and then it's all over. So I basically would observe, but I would never give direct feedback to the players unless the coach specifically was like, I need your help to enforce authority. And I was like, okay, I will do it.
And that's pretty much the thesis I'm going in with. And I've got a lot to learn. Like, I'm realistic about this. Like, just because I could broadcast League of Legends doesn't mean I can be a GM one-to-one. I look at the responsibilities and I feel like I could do it, but I got to prove it. Like, I'm not interested in people being like, so happy to have you here, you're the guy. I'm like, I've proven nothing. Nothing
like
at
it
all.
says on screen then, in terms specifically of League of Legends, like what would the goals be for the League 100 Thieves team in League?
Because like you started as an org, 100 Thieves comes in.
Yes.
They do very well. They start making finals.
Yep.
And then big dip this last year, so it's been pretty uneven.
I think it's very much about the space. You look at North America at Worlds and 3 teams going out in groups and you say, okay, whatever was happening before, the ultimate goal has to be winning Worlds, however far away that feels like. But whatever was happening before isn't working. Like, there's a lot of realities about that, and obviously everyone on this couch had hot takes about what's going wrong with North America. And I don't have the solutions. I have ideas, but no solutions. And it's a case of,
Not what you said in the pitch to come join 100 Thieves, I hope. But...
No, I pretty much did.
Okay.
I'm very kind of self-deprecating. Like, I have no problem. I don't need to come up and talk myself up. The fact that you've reached out to me suggests you're interested in something going on. And so with that, it's very much all right, we're here. These are our assets. These are where we have strengths. These are our roster pieces. What are we keeping? What are we not? And then it's very much, okay, are we one player topped up to win our title? Like, are we one player away? Are we many players away? Are those players domestic or are they imports?
How many players are you away right now?
That's
5?
a very tricky question to answer. That's a very tricky question to answer. I'm not going to be cornered on that one. I'm too smart for that.
I'll get
I'm too
you.
smart for that.
I'm going to get you.
I already did that, Monte. I already did it. What I did was I just trashed different 100 Thieves players and then observed his reaction as to, like, if he was on board with me, right, now I have an idea of
I have a tell. I crack my neck.
Yeah, the ones where he didn't see it, where it felt awkward, I had a sense of, I got my sense which his gambles might be for next year.
I actually love that question because I think one thing 100 Thieves failed at last year was kind of measuring the distance between TL and 100 Thieves, where 100 Thieves fell very close to TL due to what happened, and they're like, if we get banged, then we're going to be fine. And that wasn't the case at all, and that's something I hope 100 Thieves have a really good temperature on.
It's a very interesting point because at the end of the day, there's been many orgs in the past that we've all observed who were at a level and then didn't really seem to know where that, and then maybe they were close, but they made no changes. Like, oh, we're third, so like maybe one more season,
Just
and then it's like,
59.
you should have upgraded. It's one of the things I credit TSM with a lot is that they've been super aggressive at making bets.
Yes.
Some of them worked well, some of them failed spectacularly. But the result is not what you judge it on. You very much look at, all right, with the information they had, did they make the right choice? And whether it worked out or not, it informs the next move.
It's basically the crux of when I always tell people, because it always sounds like a weird opinion to people in hindsight. I always tell people, I don't blame Reginald for cutting double lift.
No.
Because what he
Sven and Mithy, who wouldn't have taken
exactly
that.
what he was doing there was, first of all, on paper, I think I have at worst a side grade, maybe even an upgrade, because it's even up the whole shot calling elements. And I've just done this exact thing with double lift 2 times in a row. It didn't work. So in that scenario, I get that fans can now go, well, it was the wrong decision. But like in that moment, actually, that was a move that if it had worked, you'd obviously give that guy GM of the Year award.
Yeah. Mithy was known as the shot caller. That was their problem. Sven was one of the best AD carries, in the West at that point in time. They have established synergy. You can have 2 imports because you have Bjergsen, who's a native player, a native NA player now. So, I mean,
And that's what 100 Thieves thought last year. They thought, okay, we finished second.
Yes.
Obviously, we had some personnel issues towards the end in the Cody Sun-Ricara situation. They're like, let's get Bang. That's definitely going to be better. And they made the bet, spent good money on Bang as a world champion, no doubt. And at the end of the day, fell short. A lot of things went away. They kind of misevaluated where they'd be in terms of the meta, and then obviously in standard lanes got run over a little bit. And in the end, the results didn't go the way they did. But I look at that, and I'm always clear where I'm like, I really like that you tried this. And yes, your estimation was wrong, but it wasn't just sitting on your laurels. We finished second, that's fine. It's let's win a championship with an expensive piece. That didn't work out. And so when it comes to the future, it's again, where are we at? Where are we trying to go? What talent is available? Because not every offseason is equal. Sometimes there's lots of players available. Sometimes there's not. There's a visible market of like these players' contracts are expiring on this day. There's people pitching you in DMs saying that they're available. It's always a mysterious thing, and it's my first time, so I'm learning about what that's like from the team side. And then it's, all right, with the talent available, where it's available, can we put together a roster that challenges in spring next year? Are those players available? If so, sounds great, let's go that way. However, what if we feel so much more compelled about young talent that you see growing to the level, you look at your coaching staff, say, can we develop these players? And if it has to be a 2-year plan over just a 1-split plan, I think 100 Thieves now 2 years in is pretty settled as a brand. We don't have to go out there and make a splash. Like people kind of already have an image of what 100 Thieves is. And the board, to their credit, have given me great confidence in if you have a vision, stick to it and let's see it through. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, so in professional or in whatever sports, actual sports, professional sports, whatever you want to call it, there's like rebuilding years, there's championship years. For League of Legends, everyone just views every year as like a championship year. Like, why are we not winning this year? Why are we not winning
Which
this
is what
year?
franchising was supposed to change, right?
Yeah, it didn't. It didn't at all.
I know it didn't, but it is funny because like people are always saying, well, relegation, now they're saying, well, it was better in relegation because teams aren't taking those risks. And I'll just tell you from somebody who was in a relegation tournament, like, that is terrifying. Like, there's no way I would ever like people are like, oh yeah, Monte, you ran a org full of washed up pros. I was like, you're right, I did, because I was so scared of bringing in new players because testing the unknown was not something I could really mess with.
But even now, like, it's very easy to say, before there was relegation, you couldn't afford to lose games, very little change, no rookies, and therefore it's the same names. But even now, especially with 2 years ago franchising starting and new teams, we got Evil Geniuses coming in, Immortals, Dignitas, new names. You want to make a splash, because you want to grow a fan base, right? So you want to win games because they're not going to come if you're losing all the games. So you're like, all right, got to get the standard players and stuff, and you try to make a splash because you're like, at least if we hit 10 wins and then we have cool content, people might like us. But if we win 4 games, no one is ever going to become a fan.
Yes, but also they could come in with an attitude of let's develop players not for this year, but for next year.
But I agree, you can do that if you're already an org that can puff out their chest and did something. But if you've done nothing and you just lose, then it's like, oh, another team.
I hard disagree with that because here's the problem with your logic, is that if no one is taking the risk on these up-and-coming players and no one's trying to develop talent, therefore you could be a new team, in theory.
How many meme teams have there been that tried this, like Ember and names like that in years past? We're like, we downloaded it, we're going to have the next generation.
I'll give you another great
But you understand what I'm saying, like that logic doesn't work. So theoretically, all of the people should be available for you to develop. And if your thing is, we're playing a long franchise game, then why not just be bad in 1 year?
Drop all of my theories here? Let's keep it to yourself.
Make this the last question. We'll go to Worlds after this. Go on.
Golden Guardians had the same kind of mindset where they feel like we want to develop young players, want to develop young NA players. Like, up there, people change their mind very, very quickly when you're not winning. And regarding the first impression for the New York, from the information I have, both Immortals and EG are they want to make a splash. They don't want to be timid with their first entrance or re-entrance for Immortals to LCS.
Anyway, let's skip to talk some Worlds now.
Yes, because we should actually talk about Worlds because you've been there for everything up until the semifinals. Mm-hmm. You're going back now.
Yep.
And also, you got to cast SKT all year, so you have unique insight into this very interesting match, which I thought was absolutely fantastic to watch and was very bizarre by League of Legends standards. We were discussing how weird it was that you could say that a team that went 1-5 on Barons was going to win a Series 3-1.
And that's going to be one of those, like, if you do like a pub quiz about
the ultimate
Worlds,
trivia, isn't it?
it's going to be a great trivia question. Is that reality? But I think the thing that people needed to see that they didn't see until the match actually happened was specifically, like G2 were the more composed team. G2 had the better fundamentals over SKT, and that challenges this idea of SKT, because you say that and it's like 2013 to present, and we conveniently ignore the 2 years they didn't make it, and you're like, this team is this. But so quickly that changes with the meta being so aggressively changed in the last 2 years, last year, I guess, even more. The fact that the stat was talked about by Jad a lot on stage, that there was more Worlds games played by the G2 players than by SKT, because SKT was Faker at a bajillion and then everybody else at like 12.
Yes.
So in terms of experience, there was actually an experience advantage to G2. But I think just watching these games, you saw that SKT was trying to play in G2's playground, adapt to a tournament meta that was a bit closer to how G2 play than SKT play. And to their credit, I thought SKT started Worlds this year at a higher level of like meta adaptation than they had at any previous Worlds. Like they were completely ready for this tournament. This wasn't like first round robin group stage where it's like, what are you guys doing here? I don't know what's going on. Like they were playing Tristana mid, they never played that in the LCK, and they were doing a lot of different things. I just think by the end, trying to reach for something like a tournament meta against a team that was settled and actually played that meta better, just because they've been doing it for longer, you saw where the cracks appeared, because so many smart early games in this series, and then you just watched it and you're like, they're going to get outscaled, and they just did.
When you look back now, do you actually feel like the series was close? I know that, like I brought it up earlier, that's been quite a contentious topic. I know a lot of people feel as though, like, even though G2 on the scoreboard is behind, they were always coming back into the games, and the sense was that they were always going to come back. So was SKT closer than people have made out? Like, could they have won this tournament?
My read on this series is that SKT, obviously, very observably, to the layman, to the expert, had great early games in most of these matches. They also drafted, usually, for early game more than G2.
It looked like they even thought
more
had to be an emphasis.
So on the one hand, like it's an early game meta, they were getting early game leads. And then there was always a watershed moment. We talked about, the misfires with Barons, but there was a lot of moments where they thought they knew how to play, say, a reset after Baron and then play 3 lanes. And I heard you guys talking about this, like someone would get caught, or there'd be a roam gank, or a Rise Wellmort would come in. And their fundamentals kind of, through is a strong word, but they were kind of targeted in areas where you would just assume they would grow and snowball, and they would just be taken down there. So I think in general, this was a close series, absolutely. But it's one of those close series where if SKT wasn't having those strong early games, then they would have got blown out.
Well, I the way I look at it and the way I was talking about it earlier is that in some of these games, like when we talk about, say, the first game of this series, there was an advantage that they had, but what was so brilliant about what G2 did was they just refused to fight, and they split pushed with the Rise, and then by the time they dragged it out long enough that by the time the Baron fight occurs, they're trading bottom inhib for the Baron. And SKT would frequently only have 2 or 3 turrets by 25 minutes into the game. So even if they get the Baron, they're bad at closing out, and with Baron, period. But you're definitely not going to close it out if you still have all these turrets to go through. So if you're trading pressure, like you just always felt like the pressure on the map was there.
So for me, even though it was like 3-1 and we can talk about it as a close series, I think this wasn't very close when you think about if this series is played over and over again, who's going to come out ahead.
I agree with that.
SKT doesn't know how to snowball, and SKT's playbook is limited. There's a game where SKT was playing Ryze and Renekton. There's this shadow play that's incredibly common. You send your Renekton to bottom, away where both Ryze and Renekton have TP, and the Ryze goes behind the Renekton.
Like a piggyback game.
Yeah. You kill the solo laner, and both of you guys can teleport to Baron. SKT had double Mountain Drake, and they didn't do that play, and they opted for a 5-man play at Baron instead. It tells me their understanding of what should be happening later on is limited compared to G2. So even in the game they won, they had to get massively ahead with LeBlanc Lee Sin. Perkz had to make a mistake with shifting forward and getting killed on Ezreal. There has to be a lot of G2 mistakes for SKT to win. So I think if you play it over and over again, I'm going to have to side with G2 way more so.
And I think the language here is important, because I think the fact that SKT got leads made it a close series. But I actually think anyone predicting SKT here was being very fanciful about a ideal SK Telecom historical, or like they've never not
just
made
like
it
day
to
one,
semis or
the
final.
first week of the group,
Exactly.
Yeah, like looking perfect.
I'm with you in that you play this series 10 times. I think G2 win 8 at least. I do think they were considerably the better team here, but I think what we actually got was almost among the best of the, like if you can roll the series 100 times, this was one of the better results where G2, who aren't necessarily a fantastic early game team, they normally kick off in mid game and then really blow out there. They had poor early games. Like Faker was super fed on Kiana and stuff. And you guys are already talking about meta issues here. I think SKT seemed a bit at 6s and 7s, and G2 didn't really feel rushed in this series like you might imagine, even though early game lost, early game lost, early game lost.
That's also, to me, what makes G2 just so startlingly unique, is on the one hand, they are super decisive and love to be really proactive and fight and skirmish, but at the same time, they also, at the same time, can be super poised and really composed and look like they don't feel the pressure of an upcoming engage or something.
It was so lovely to go. When I went to Europe and did the G2 Fnatic game, I got to do a couple of their post-game shows, a lot of pro players and coaches. And the most striking thing I took from that was speaking to the pros about kind of Worlds coming up. It's up, how you feeling? It's in Europe. Aren't you excited? And they're like, no, I'm nervous. And I'm like, why is that? And they're like, well, now that G2 went and won MSI, now we have to perform. Like, we're basically like the strongest region based on at least regional kind of rankings, right? Because we won the international tournament. There's no more the like, go to Worlds and do your best, but like the Koreans will win eventually.
Or like, semis is good. Yeah. Hey, that's pretty good, man.
And it was very interesting to hear that, like, kind of a very interesting take to understand, like, now that G2 were the peacock that won the tournament, it's now, hey, actually winning it is the goal. It's not just your best effort. It's, damn, put everything into winning it. And that extra pressure, I think, has really leveled up the region as a whole. Like, G2 and Fnatic were talking about that. I know people have their, G2's here and everybody else is lower, but at the end of the day, G2 walked taller than SKT and were more fundamentally sound than SKT, and that is an error shift.
Do you think, are there any, did you have a point on that?
Yeah, so G2 is smarter than SKT, and one stat that really shows it is gold lead versus dragon lead. So SKT on average at 15 has higher dragons than most teams, and G2 actually has just slightly below, but their gold average at 15 is much higher. What that tells me is G2 knows how to make the right decision going into mid-game. And the right decision isn't always over-prioritize dragon, but for SKT, they're so formulaic, it's always over-prioritize dragons.
And when I looked at G2, I did my VOD reviews, I watched LEC, the thing that I was most in awe of, like, you look at the average game time and it's like 6, 7, 8 minutes shorter than other teams, because when they want to kill a game, the game is over. Like, they can kill games in a way that wasn't possible in previous metas. It involves Baron and turret changes and stuff like that, but they can just end games kind of at their will, at the snap of their fingers. Meanwhile, the LCK was still very much like
they're the best at closing
political
the game out,
victory,
right?
or like
really
economic victory, kind of much slower and play the 3 lanes. And that's why I was struck by those moments where SKT would get a Baron and then fumble it, because they were trying to do what you would do years ago.
You can get away with that in Korea.
That's actually the sad thing, is that somehow that mentality is still prevalent in Korea, which goes, any edge you get, you spread to the whole team, and you try and remove risk. Whereas what they don't seem to understand is, in this meta, the fact that you have the advantage, you press that advantage and you win the game.
It's almost like everybody's armor got like much cheaper, because you just take so much damage, right? That like, what can happen now is everyone can take TP. In metas before, there was only 1, top lane. Eventually, there was 2 for a while now. Everyone can take TP. Everyone dies really fast. You can be a tank, but you're going to blow up in the late
you can
game
also
anyway.
win 4 versus 5. So even if somebody gets picked off, you could just re-engage. If key ults were used to pick off one person, you can come back and win that fight.
You think about some of the metas that you and I cast where you try and go and kill the Scion bot lane with 2 or 3 people, and he's like, doing his thing and dying in 30 seconds, popping a stone plate. Now he dies in 8 seconds, and then your TP will get you to defend an objective. And so before it was very much push out those lanes, and how dare you send 3 people bot lane? Haha, look at the mini map, you're losing top inhib, you're losing mid inhib. Now it is, you killed them all and you got there, and the enemy's like, oh wait, we have 4 against 5, and now we back away and the Baron's botched. It's a very different pace to the game. The idea of macro is probably something you wrestled with coming back to the game is, there is no more beautiful, slow game, 45 minutes in, one epic team fight. Like, how many epic team fights are there anymore? You don't see them because people blow up because they made a more decisive call. And then your macro is how much you're getting from that.
Well, everything to me now, half the time in League, feels just like a small skirmish starts and it becomes a team fight.
Yeah.
Like,
and some team fights are 3 skirmishes.
there's the other thing. People just re-engage over and over again. It's really nothing like the old league.
Well, that's because, like you're saying, there's a lot of teleports, so you can get anywhere, or there's high mobility ultimates that are coming down, especially in this meta. Like we've seen Talia, we've seen Twisted Fate, we've seen Rise, all coming in and playing pretty major roles.
And you can't cancel your TP, so once you've done it, you may as well.
Oh, you're going in.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, like, stun locking is a lot easier than it used to be in terms of, because like how many times did we see in these semifinals an Ezreal or a Kayle just get stun locked and they literally can't use Arcane Shift or Flash or the
so
Kayle.
It wasn't relevant before, but I actually talk about the CC bar more than most casting, the white bar that shows someone's crowd controlled. And there's so many times where it never lets up because it's high damage, high CC. Person's just dead. Like you look at
and
the
you burn
Shy.
it down so fast now anyway.
The Shy has a million items on Kayle. Doesn't matter.
It didn't matter at all.
Overstep died.
There was something Riot changed about 3 years ago where you could input buffer between CCs. It was a little buggy, but they made it so you couldn't do that input buffer anymore. So they actually fixed the problem that was.
Because before you like randomly flash and you look at him and be like, well, wait, he was stunned the whole time. Why did he get to flash?
I've got a challenge for everyone here. I'm going to take this a different route than they actually know we're even going to do on the production here.
Oh.
So my question is this. It's the same question I actually asked coming into this semi-final. So most people, despite what you said earlier, most people actually did pick SK Telecom, I saw, to win this semi-final, right? And most people's logic was they look the best, and also, you know, G2 had their flounder in the group stage on the second week, etc. But one of the reasons I said I couldn't pick against G2 is I said every argument everyone gave was just an argument for SK. It was never against G2. So I'll ask the question I asked before, and for me it's a rhetorical, I don't know if there's an answer, is what are people not liking about G2? How are people picking against G2? Like, I can't find really any like real fundamental reasons. I think
there's a lot of reasons here.
So can you think of good ones?
Well, let me tell you why I picked SKT, right, in the semis. I got a very bad read off of them off of Splice because I thought they were trolling. Like, I thought their drafts were weird. I thought they were intentionally hiding strategies. I thought SKT looked okay in groups, and based on G2's look in groups, I was mostly going off of what I saw in group stage because I didn't feel like SKT was tested at all against Splice. So, my mistake.
Do you have any? You can come up with one, I'm sure. What would you say are weaknesses for G2, or where are they not at the absolute best, for example?
Weaknesses for G2 is so hard because G2 morph. Like the
That's
first
what I
game,
always say is one of their strengths.
The first game they play through. You know, when they came in and played that strategy against Griffin, and I was like, Griffin can't beat the strategy.
Looked amazing, didn't
the meme is greatly reluctant fighters for a reason. Like they really do play a very low combined kills per minute game. And then G2's like, well, we just outrange you. We have hard engage. We have scaling, and you guys won't force an engage. Like, there's so many talent games I saw from Griffin where I'm like, you just don't know how to play this champion at all. It doesn't matter how good Chovy is at laning when you have no idea how to snowball a game. I think Griffin had a fantastic read there. And DM grabs afterwards and like, you're the MVP here. And he's like, thank you very much. G2 they've been placed in a box because I think the LEC and like non-Asian regions, you know, Korea and China, have always been counted out. And people are looking for them to fall a little bit because there's no precedent for a G2 team to exist. And it's like, oh, they only play crazy, or I remember the Garen game, that was a bit dumb.
There's been a lot of pigeonholing, like you say, because that was the original thing people said. It's just a lot of wacky picks, isn't it?
But now, let's say they win, the benefit of the doubt is there forever for, I think, the LEC and G2 as a team.
By the way, I'll even say this is a good example of why, first of all, as an analyst, if you really do think something, like if you think, for example, a team that everyone else thinks is bad now is going to be the best next year, now's the time to say it because you'll get your credit later on the back end. So one thing I'll give an analyst credit for is actually Kelsey Moser, before MSI.
100 Thieves, Kelsey Moser.
This was, works for actually championship.
That's true. No asterisk at all. We just won it straight up with our developmental talent.
She taught someday how to win. Top NA talent coming up. No,
someday.
But here was the point I was going to make was, going into MSI, actually at that point in time, because we hadn't seen G2 win yet, there was a lot of debate. Like Papa was bigging up SKT and how they would adapt. Obviously, people thought IG looked amazing coming into that. But what she actually said was, she said she thought it was a distraction, all the weird picks and the weird comps. To her, she even said at that time, G2, I think, has the best fundamental understanding of the way League of Legends is played. She was absolutely right. She actually nailed that like 6 months ago. What a great call.
I remember coming into MSI in this whole debate, and I wasn't watching League of Legends actively at the time, but I watched the European final, and I literally thought to myself, this is the best Western team I have ever seen. Like, I was like, they blew me away.
And to be fair, people were high on G2 as a team.
Sure.
It's just there was this group of 4, teams that could win.
Yes.
Maybe 3. Team Liquid was still in a good spot then. And it was, these teams could all win. And for once, because China had won Worlds, there was no overlord. It was like, well, IG are good, so like they're definitely going to be up there. But they hadn't got the kind of insane cred of like 5 tournaments in a row. And so I think everyone knew G2 were good. It's just how good was the question. And,
How good internationally?
and people felt kind of betrayed that they lost to IG twice,
Yes,
but then won the tournament. And that only, to me, added hype for Worlds because it's like, all right, well, now we get to see it all again. And we still have incomplete information. But I was always super high on G2 as well because the big thing I had is I was like, Korea is doing it wrong because they added all this gold. I always called the turrets like gold pinatas. You just whack away at them and gold pops out. So of course it has to be pushing lanes and aggression. And you remember the battle warding term that you and DoA credited for Peanut. Like that's the way to play the game because if you're a jungler and the enemy jungler can't walk near you because you can blow them up with your big damage, then you walk to the turret, enemy jungler can't join, and you're going to get more and more gold. You don't even have to get the kill to get the gold.
Yeah, it's also just like, like you say, you don't have to get the kill. You can zone them off.
Oh, yeah.
Turret because
And that gets you a kill's worth of gold.
So, like, it really has been, like you say, interesting coming back because the plates do add all that early game gold, which you can also get with the Rift Herald if you're taking it for 14 minutes. And because time to kill is lower, tower dives are very threatening because you can kill somebody before the tower kills you. If you kill them, you get that gold and you get the tower gold. Or people are just scared and they're like, I need to leave this tower right now, so you get the tower gold.
But the problem people have is that to do this battle warding, high skirmish, high fight style, you will end up doing boneheaded plays. Like there'll be a time where you thought you saw something and then you get 2v1 collapse.
But it doesn't matter as long as you keep pressure.
But the thing is, the casual fan watching is like, that wasn't clean. Like that person died in a silly way over there and that. And they're used to the games that we used to cast where we complimented teams on risk-free, low risk, high reward, or low risk, medium reward plays again and again and again, you win. But that is not the way to win anymore.
Yeah.
And reteaching fans, it's a kind of frustration for me is people like, what a fiesta game. And I'm like, no, like these teams knew what they needed to do. They knew where they needed to push. They got the turret plates and they won the game. And I don't blame fans for, because every region was doing it a bit differently. North America and Korea was slow. Europe and China were faster. There's some time lag there. It took a long time for you to explain Korean brilliance of macro to the fans. And I think new macro, and I don't think the meta's going to change. We're going to keep with shorter games and high damage.
Sure.
It's going to take time for people to catch
I'll
up.
give you an analogy here, right? So in the world of poker, so a very old school game compared to a video game, and that's decades to, figure all the theory crafting out and stuff. The old school traditional right way to play poker was actually to play a conservative style and to basically play the maths,
Check
try and
raise.
figure out, roughly like where's he at, and then you just basically play the numbers in your mind, hence why people could play like 8 tables at once. But what basically poker developed into meta-wise was people being very aggressive, because what they learned was aggression already carries an implicit advantage, which is that you force the other person to react to you. And I see that so much in League now. Like that's one area I feel like the Koreans are sometimes behind. Like the old school thinking of how you do a gank, for example. A gank no longer is about the jungler going into the lane and killing someone. Now a gank can be just burn his flash, push him out of lane, with reset a wave state. Like what people aren't realizing is that might look like a failed gank. It actually, in the context of it, might always be a good acceleration play. You might push the lanes up, etc.
I mean,
it's very rare nowadays.
Even if you dive a turret and die,
it can still be a positive.
There's still you're still pushing those minions into the turret. You still might get a plate anyway.
Like in the
you're denying pressure and a plate in some way. And I know you and I were talking, and you said you've been talking to me about this stuff and saying like you told me the other night that you think that the most important thing right now is like wave manipulation and wave pressure. So talk about that.
Another area G2 is very good in, right?
Because wave manipulation and wave pressure. Like there was multiple games here, even in the SKT series, where G2 just had more farm because Rise was pressuring, no one could answer that. They were trying to push, but they had a medium range team with Nico and stuff, so they couldn't dive because they weren't confident enough to. And then you just lose out on CS, and we'll see 80 CS more for one team than the other. And then coming back to plates, it's almost at the point now, because before it was like a failed gank was when you didn't get the kill, and then a failed gank evolved to be when you couldn't get a flash, but like getting a flash was a successful gank because like, aha, you can return to this. Now, actually, the game is so much about like forcing out a teleport and then just sending more people. Rise walks top, and then 2 plates comes in, and the enemy top lane is paralyzed because they're like, I can't back because I can't teleport back in, and I need this farm. and 320 gold, 480 gold is going to the team. And a lot of that is about setup and roam timings. So the game is very different now.
Yeah, there's another area people also are missing who are casual fans. I've even seen some fans, again, because they're going off past knowledge, things that used to be right. I've seen some fans criticise when the top laner early in the game doesn't just get forced off the turret and go back. He goes back under the tower and risks dying. And I always tell people, like, what do you think he does with his lane? Just let all the farm die. Like, he can't just give up the game.
In a way,
he has to gamble it, and hope he survives.
The way I look at it is, in a way, it is sort of like going back to lane swaps in some weird way, in that denying people is so important right now. Because like if you look at the SKT IG game when they had the Renekton Camille matchup and like Khan started to get really ahead, SKT G2, where Renekton started to get very ahead and Camille was down, and the denying of the wave, and like it's gotten to the point where the casters were saying like, oh, this could literally be the end of the game.
Yeah.
And we're definitely a lot more confident to call those things early. What I'll say is the lane swap meta required a burden of knowledge. Like some teams just didn't do their homework. Like you could tell they needed to do homework they didn't do. But it was very predictable how you execute a lane swap, like the jungle follow and all those things were very predictable. It's harder now because it's a lot more conditional information with less vision. The game doesn't start always the same way. If you've got a Jarvan, it's going to be very different to if you have a 3-camp clear jungler. So because of that, there is always more risk to place. And it's one of those things where people ask, what is G2's style? And there's a lot of answers to that question. They're all correct. But the one that I look at is, if you ever see the enemy team making a move in a lane, you can look at the minimap, and in 2 other lanes, they're taking a loss. Like, they're always like, okay, this is going to happen here. If they're going top, we're getting mid and bot. Like, they're having an all-in from Caps, a mechanical player in mid on a champion that can force, and the jungler's forcing the enemy off the bot lane or killing them, and then they're getting the Drake. And yes, you can get a Rift Herald slowly as a response, but winning in 2 places is always better than winning in 1 place. And the game is like that now because everyone's running around with CC and big damage, that playing the map is even more important than it ever was.
So 2 things. One thing I do want to talk about regarding like proxy and like pushing people out. When we had Monte on the show, he talked about how in scrims, if G2 or other teams get that proxy with mid and jungle where they walk and they push the bot lane out, the game is over. Like that is very common in scrims. It happens so much more. Like the games we see on stage, it's like more of a control version where people aren't being risky, but in scrims, like it is crazy how much that proxy means, and like the game is over. If your mid and jungle can get control on the bot red side, the game is literally over because your bot lane can't farm and it's impossible to walk back into the jungle.
It changed how mid lane played because now really mid lane is, if you have the push and you leave to a certain side, everyone on that side is paralyzed with it. The top lane is like, oh crap. The jungle's like, I got to get the Raptors and get the hell out now as fast as possible. How many waves do you give up? There's so little wards that you only know that you're potentially fully at risk. You try to rotate, actually stayed in mid lane, then pushed another wave and went bot side. Now your bot side's like, holy crap, now we're screwed. It is so much about the threat. It's so much about cutting through conditional information and trying to make an educated understanding of what to do. And I think that really favors decisive players with strong mechanics who also are willing to puff out their chest. Because if you are a risk-averse player, then every time they go missing, you're missing 2 CS out of a wave at minimum, and it's just a disaster.
There's a few teams I do want to mention that play by formulas. I think they are RNG, SKT, and Team Liquid, and they're all
FPX also you could maybe include.
It's just a different formula.
Yeah. But these teams have formulas regarding this is how our early game should look like, this is what our mid game should
Who's
look like.
getting the CS in the mid to late game, Uzi, for example, there?
When they don't go according to the formula, they break apart and they can't make the right decisions and they can't adapt. And we saw where these teams failed. Like when the formula is strong and you're doing it by their formula, they are extremely strong teams and extremely hard to break. But if you can make them uncomfortable, they'll break very easily.
Along these lines then, let's just for a moment, we'll all play the role of GM. So on a team like SK Telecom, when you are SK Telecom, not just because of the history, but even some of the active players you have now, you should take winning worlds as your like only reasonable expectation.
For sure.
Yeah, like that's one reason why that whole drama that was separate about the press conference, like I get people might not have liked the way the questions were phrased, but the tone is absolutely correct. And that really should be, if you're a team like SKT, if you even lose the final and someone says, do you need to make a change? Do you need to improve in some area? That's not an unfair question. Like, the expectation should be there. So if I was to ask you that question, like, what does SK Telecom do now? Like, how do you make this SKT into next year's world champ? Like, what is there a role you'd be looking to change or something stylistically we need to
Let me give a little bit of realistic context. Faker and Teddy are the ones on extended contracts. Khan, Klid, and Effort. I'm actually not sure about Effort. But
I think Effort was on a 2-year deal.
He was already there from before, yeah.
Khan and Klid become free agents.
Okay.
Here's my take on this, and it's answering and not answering your question. It's that I think there is the burden of being in the Korean system for so long, where the game was played and you were drilled as to what the game is, and I think the coaching staff also. Like, we saw Rift Rivals where the LCK teams went. They actually played to a faster meta, and LPL seemed surprised. There was some patch advantages and stuff, but regardless, that they had the right mindset. They won the game, and I was like, all right, we're coming back to LCK, and then we're just farming again, and no one's killing anyone. I think the Koreans have been too inflexible about their ideal way to play the game, and I don't know where the talent refresh needs to happen. Is it purely on the coaching side? Is it purely on the player side? We're seeing a lot of coaching moves with KT and Kingzone, Griffin all changing up their coaching there. I think both sides need to be updated. And I do think there are players who have been superstars for a long time who have grown into a playstyle that made sense for 5 years, who won't be able to relearn their role and who might just
Name
be
them.
done.
You can't.
Smeb. I think
Basically,
Smeb is
a bunch of XKT players, BDD maybe even, who knows where he's at,
One of the hardest things for League of Legends players is the game resets, and when your cup is full, you can't keep filling it. It'll just overflow, and you still have the same knowledge. You need to dump all that knowledge and relearn like a rookie.
It's so
and
weird.
There's pride, there's time spent. Like, it's so hard to be
look,
humble.
I'm the perfect person to talk about this because I left and the game dramatically changed. And one of the things I've been doing over this worlds is relearning the game. And like, I actually have really enjoyed it. Like, I actually think this fast-paced style, I see how the macro has changed. And I think it was especially stark in this G2 SKT game. I think this is the best example of how the macro game has changed of any series that I've seen so far at Worlds. And it really is, I think it's a really cool macro game that's being played
The analogy
right now.
I would give is this. Old League of Legends was really like a degree course. Like, you study for years, you learn all the fundamentals, all the exact specifics of if I was in this exact scenario, what would be the correct move. At the end, you study for your final exam and you hope at the end you get your degree. Now it's like a pop quiz, which is like, whatever we were learning this week, here's a pop quiz on that one. Who could answer it now? And
But
G2 are the ones acing the quiz.
It's so hard to message, though, because I love the pop quiz analogy, because it's not just one. It's like,
there's
so many different skill tests where you need to make the decisive call. And if you make no call, it's almost worse than making the wrong call.
Which is key, because sometimes
so you have to be in there.
In the old meta, you could also stalemate a lot of the time. You could just say, we'll just both agree to not do anything right now. That doesn't happen now.
And a lot of players, especially in Korea, could hide their effective champion pools by just farming things out and then coming online later. It doesn't work anymore. Like, you lost too many turret plates, and then you lost control of your side, and then you never got the team fight, because we never have team fights anymore, and the game is over. So it became hard. Like, you remember when we had to cast kind of Mad Life towards the end of his career, where he had a really good spring season, then in summer, he was like 9th or 10th best support on performance. And it's so hard as a caster, because you're like, I love this player, I watched him for so long, he innovated his role, but now, like, you even find it weird to criticize. Like, you have to say the negatives of what happened, but like, you have, like, your heart is heavy because you respect this player so much. And this season, we had Smeb out of the roster, we had Score in and out with other issues there. We had Prey come back and look a shell of his former self. Like, all these players who played a game, it's almost like, Overwatch to Overwatch 2. It almost like League of Legends 2 came out and they were like, well, I was really good at League of Legends, and then now it's so different. And what made me strong and unique no longer applies one-to-one. And now actually I'm at the back of the queue, and I may never get to the top of the queue again, because my career is not going to be infinite.
Do you have some actual real player changes you would want to do for SKT, though?
For SKT, well, more so than player changes, they need to do everything in their power to keep Klid. Because Klid has played in China before, and he's had an insane Worlds performance. I think he was the best player on SKT.
Easily. He's the most important player, too.
If they lose Klid, I don't think they'll ever find it.
To me, let's be real. The real problem in this team is, in old teams, Faker defined the style. Klid defines this SKT style. Like, they go as he goes, basically. In fact, I don't...
Well, Faker's never had a jungler in this
That's also the reason why, to me, this
I don't know if I'll say that. I think he's never had a jungler like Klid. And Klid, I still am in love with his entry into interview, where like Inven or whichever Korean site was like, hey, like, what do you think about coming to SKT? And he was like, well,
under Faker.
Yeah, playing under Faker. He's like, well, like, I'm going to play my style, and I'm not 100% sure whether Faker can back me up like he needs to. And like, already you're like, wow, okay, that's some swag. And then he proved it with his gameplay, and it is a jungler-defined SKT for the first time ever. Like, the first phase was, and that's the thing, is like, how do you rate Bengi in the meta he was in versus Klid in the meta he's in? They're so different. like Bengi knew what he needed to do and he did it well. And then Faker and Clid is such a different relationship. And that's why I credit Faker so much, because I looked at him before as someone who was very inflexible around playing around the jungle. Like Blank, for example, wasn't a wonderful player by any means, but I think he actually got hung out to dry by Faker multiple times. There's a very famous game where he plays Rumble mid with Smite and Blank plays Kindred. And like, you know what this comp is for. Like Kindred jumps in, she has a skirmish advantage over everyone, and Faker just has to like tend towards his side and throw down the equalizer at a million range. Instead, Blank would invade and Faker would be killing his own Raptors, and then Blank would die because he had no backup. And I'm like, all right, well, there's something fundamentally wrong here, and it cannot be one person only at fault. It's not like Blank's like, what's over here? And dies randomly. So the fact that Faker could reinvent himself was a huge plus to a player who didn't need any more pluses. But
so
it's a funny old game.
I want to add one thing. I will say this with the caveat: Faker is the best player ever. Faker is like,
you don't need caveats. We're
he's a legend.
on the nines, baby.
There's former SKT players that have said privately that I would never play with Faker again. He is inflexible, and he is stubborn, and he is greedy.
Sounds a bit like Froggen.
I mean, he literally had a
When all the
revolving
good
door.
players end up being like that, Loco.
They had a revolving door of one-year top laners who would come in, get their title or finish second, and then leave.
Well, Khan was also the second best player on their team this Worlds, I would say. So
that's actually the problem I feel like going forwards though, is like from Worlds, it's hard to cut Khan. He actually had an all right tournament. He did pretty well generally in the meta. The problem is though, actually, if I just look historically at this lineup, he would be the first person I'd remove. Because my logic goes like this. It's not even a diss on Khan. It's like in this particular team, I don't feel like, I almost wish I could change his alias because Faker isn't Faker to me. Like the whole team isn't defined by how he plays. He's not definitely even the best player. He's not even the best mid laner in Korea sometimes. So as a result, you can't really go with the old formula of SKT. So to me, when I look at their team, like Teddy, I actually think was a bit underwhelming this World. So what I want to know is where are the big carry threats? Who are the people who are going to carry the game? So if Teddy wants to play, like he looks now like he's on a like semi-supportive style sometimes, just get me a carry top laner then. Get me someone who wants to be in the carry out the top lane.
So for me, I don't think SKT needs to make very much changes. If they want, they could even run this lineup again with effort getting more experience. They just have to change their view on the game and really humble themselves. We didn't get to touch on Rift Rivals that much, but I think Korea winning Rift Rivals was in a sense bad for Korea because they doubled down. They needed another spanking, but they doubled down on we know best, like Korea is back. And it was just so disappointing to see what PaPaSmithy said, like go back into the farm, go back into the passive Korea, and that mindset, like just carrying over.
It's more disappointing to me that we've changed so much in League of Legends. In 2019, it's Korea that tries to take the pity morale win from Rift Rivals and go, we didn't win Rift Rivals though, guy. Isn't that
I mean, it was surreal because I was there with the Riot production, right? And you know, people were tearing up when they won because there was lots of people, just to be clear, listen to this. There was lots of people working the show that had never been at a tournament where Korea won.
Oh, Korean people, you mean?
Yeah,
right,
they were Korean people and they were super, I'm not talking about the fans, I'm talking about like staff members, talking about translators. Like they had never seen a Korean.
And were you like, boy, you guys missed a few years ago. You would have loved this. They used to win them all, believe it or not, back in the day.
The problem is expectations. The expectation for Korean fans and to Korean players and Korean teams is we are the best. Like we should be winning Worlds.
Well, we got a lot of counterexamples now.
Yeah, I mean, they have to be humble. They have to.
By the way, that is a real problem Korea has, though. Essentially, it's basically Korean chauvinism. Like they by default assume they're going to be the best. Whereas what made them the best was things to do with Korea, but it wasn't. They weren't literally just born like we're just the best. They had reasons that contributed.
They had the talent.
That's why, personally, though, I do think that like roster moves should at least be considered. Because the one thing Korea doesn't have to complain about is the next crop of talent.
Oh yeah.
Spoiler: they're already at the top of the LCK. Griffin, Damwon, Sandbox. Most of these players are pretty fresh, so you can really pick a lot of these guys.
Your hope is, like, the question is always, how does Korea remember this Worlds? And we thought last year's humbling would change things, and it did a bit. But I think this is the doubling down of, we had two teams full of rookies, make it to quarters. That's actually really good for those two teams. Like, people will say Griffin could have gone farther with a different opponent or on a different day, but
less drama.
That's so much experience for those players that they will pay forward. And there's SKT, who's the kind of stacked roster there of the old guard who went the furthest, but clearly hadn't got the full picture there. There will be iterating on this, and who's to say how much roster movements there'll be? I prefer not to comment too much on roster stuff, given that I'm in roster construction mode. All I'll say for SKT is, my biggest takeaway from the last kind of 6 weeks to 2 months is that Khan is finally the player they wanted him to be. Because like, you remember, like, I watched all your content talk about how, like, on the weak side, this guy's a huge liability in spring. You know, he was trying to be himself, and he wasn't what he needed to be. Now he can be both. I think he plays weak side well. I think he plays strong side very well, and showed that again that he could play the Quinn and actually be able to do all that stuff. He's finally there, but you could see them trying a straight perceived skill upgrade on him, and then it's like, actually now you need another 5 months to work out how to integrate a new top laner, and then who's to say you're behind the 8 ball on other stuff. So I think it's very easy to overcomplicate for SKT, and I
what you're saying
tend
is,
with coaching side.
Personally, you're not that keen on SKT making a change, even a perceived upgrade.
It's a very interesting word choice you have there.
Just saying, Anyway, let's move on again. So what we won't focus too much on the other semi. Like, I think it's the least interesting one to talk about. We'll talk about FPX going forwards.
I mean, I do want to talk about the other semi a little bit. It's like, obviously, this
You
one...
sound like the average Western viewer of like G2 won, and like they're going to smash whoever was there.
We can talk about on one show. But anyway, go ahead then.
All right, we'll just talk about Fun Plus Phoenix then.
Yeah.
Let's start with a conversation.
No.
that.
What we'll do with this is, if we're only going to talk about FPX, let's talk about the final in that scenario. So that's what I mean. If we're not going to specifically go into the details, since we went pretty in depth before.
I hate the other semis too.
I would just say this. How about this? Who, over the semis, a topic they want to ask, I think it's a decent one, it's a nice analytical one, is who would be your MVP of the semi-finals? So of those two games, who stands out as the person for your MVP? Let's each pick one and then give our reasons, and in doing so, a delightful conversation should arise. So who would you pick, Monte? Who's the best player from both semis? Because I already know Loco's. Loco's 100% going to say Perkz. That's like beyond.
I think Perkz,
what the hell?
Perkz,
Mind
and that's not a good choice.
I would have said Caps from G2.
I thought so as well.
I would say from the other one, Tien, probably.
Yes.
So those would be my picks, just because I think Tien was given a lot of very good Tien picks in that, so he was set up to be.
This guy's just a monster.
Yeah,
he's amazing in the air.
Yeah, he was set up to shine, but I think that because of the way DoA plays, and because we saw 3 Nautilus games, which is a more support or CC oriented, even though he does build like proto belt,
sure.
Every jungler in the world wishes they were
wish they'd
jungling for
DoA.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the best.
Because basically he can just build carry.
Can you imagine being like? It's like we always talk about when we're casting games, like, oh, you don't want to go top. There's no gank assist there. Like, you can't gank for a level 3 Vladimir. DoA always playing the biggest CC champion with the most point and click ever. And as a jungler, you're like, as long as you can communicate your lane state, we're just farming the kills here.
Pulled in perfectly. He knows if mid laner has flash or not.
But you also get, I mean, you guys touched on kind of the nemesis and feedback around, like DoA is not the best classical mid laner of what mid lane.
He never was. But he never played that way.
But that's like, I think that's the disconnect with the fans. It's like Nemesis is talking very much about like classical mid laner, like who is the best mid laner? They're thinking like gets every single CS and is so effortless and like sidesteps everything. Like that's not DoA. He's playing a frontline tank in the mid lane half the time. But is he the most effective mid laner? I think the answer is clearly yes.
Yeah, the difference is here's
so
what,
different.
If I was to say something to Nemesis after that remark, I'd say this. Here's the difference, though, Nemesis. DoA is the best possible mid laner for FPX.
And for this meta, I would argue he is the best possible mid laner.
Like in the context of how they play, I wouldn't change DoA for rookie. Because they would lose all the things that DoA brings outside of laning. Like, yes, their laning would be amazing, but would that help them? They would lose more games.
That's a perfect point. There's no other mid laner that would be better for FPX. And also,
I think you guys are coming about this completely the wrong direction. Because you heard the interview with DoA afterwards where it's like, what's special about you? It's like, well, I'm DoA and it's a DoA team, and DoA team always plays the same style. He has always played this style.
Yep.
He has always warped the game. You know, we saw around the world the DoA Rise item build come up with the Righteous Glory and the tank stuff. Like his teams have always played his style. So FPX just brought in a system that was always going to play a specific way. It also coincided with the meta coming through and players stepping up. Like Tien had been around in the past, like he had been with Knight as a very kind of powerful duo in the past, but cast with DoA, like, if you're a jungler, you dream of playing with a player like DoA, and there aren't many like them around there. These mad scientists who know exactly what to give the team.
Who would you pick, Monte? Who would your pick be?
He already said
probably Tien. I would say Tien overall, just because I think that somebody really had to step up on that team, and like I'm pretty underwhelmed, generally speaking, with LWX. Gimgoon is like fine, but he gets
Isn't
fed.
it amazing
He
that
gets fed. It is also hilarious.
Like you cast the weird thing is like most
Xenix.
people like we talk about like, the finals and like there's 2 Koreans in the final. Most people are like, really? Like they don't know that DoA and especially Gimgoon,
who used to play on Xenix,
Korean, and like they don't know Gimgoon from like 2014.
No, that's what's killer, because the context they missed though is this: everyone else from that Xenix team had already made it.
Yeah.
Arrow, Coco, Swift, was it Peekaboo was the fifth?
Peekaboo was there.
They'd all made it. Gimgoon was the only one who didn't. He was the one who like, whatever happened to the top player of that team? Years later, he's in the
He was in the LSPL and then the LPL's
Isn't that
10th
crazy?
team
He was in
for
some of
the
the worst
longest
teams
time.
for a while, yeah.
So anyway, I'm just saying, like, if I look at this roster, I'm like, who's actually the carry here? And my answer is TM.
I agree with you as a thought experiment for the tournament. Like, I'd have Tian as tournament MVP.
Yes.
I think he's been wonderful. I think for the semifinals, Tian's at least in game was garbage. He was terrible. On Lee Sin, so I actually think Crisp will probably be my MVP.
All right.
Yeah,
I think
he was mine for
he's really, really good. But like the true MVP is the system, the jungle mid support.
Spoken like a true GM.
The reason why I say that
The true MVP is Daylor.
Hey, he's not around anymore, but he still gets his shout-outs, so something went right there. All I mean is, like, Nemesis, no doubt, when he made the comment, was frustrated by the fact that it didn't matter that he was better at clicking buttons.
winning my lane. I was
winning my lane, but the 3 were always mid, and people, like, default to kind of the really, like, season 1 or pre-season 1, like, well, like, you had to bring 3 people to kill me, so aren't you terrible? It's like, okay, come on, guys, it's 2019, almost 2020, and it's a different game. The system of DoA being perfect at what he wants to do, which is play for the jungler with hard CC, and the lanes always being able to find the right roam timings, always be ahead of the roam, that is the reason why it sucks to mid lane against this team, because there never is that time to look for the solo kill with your better mechanics. You're going to get slammed by the 2 people you can't see.
Right, I'll pick for mine, because I had similar thoughts. Like from the FPX series, I thought Crisp. I thought especially because, as I said, like I actually think the LWX player's he's not a very good player. Actually, I'm amazed he's made it to World's Finals. So respect to his lane partner. I think he did an awesome job. From the other one, if I had to pick the overall one, I might have gone also with Monte's Caps. I think it's a pretty good one, especially because, like I said, it's not even that Caps had like all the pop-off games. When did he have a bad game in that series? Like he was just fine the whole time. Like the joke is everyone gives Caps games where he's terrible. He's allowed to do that because he's such a genius. So if you're just not going to have any bad games against SKT, that's pretty sick performance right there.
Caps leveled up. Caps leveled up at
He's a
this
monster.
World. I've been waiting for him to be bad, and as like fans like to say it, for him to be craps. We haven't seen Craps. Like, Caps has just been on point every single time. And one thing he doesn't get credit for, that he's starting to get credit for, is he's so good about just disappearing off the map. Caps does not play for plating. He plays for pressure in other lanes. He plays for the jungler. He plays for bot lane. He plays for top lane. And you said DoA is the most effective mid laner. I think Caps is way up there also.
I mean, for sure, right?
Other lanes.
It's no surprise these 2 are in the final, and I think Caps' development has been so clear that like he was the craps claps, like, 2 sides of the same coin, flip a coin player in the past. But his amount of ego expression is so different now. Like he doesn't need to be the pop-off player. The only game I think of is their loss to TL in the second round robin of MSI, where like he was overreached. I think it was on Corki at the time and dying, trying to force something. Since then, especially in this Worlds, he's played with very little ego. He's been very much a facilitator for his team. And he was able to do that in his best games in the past, but you were always around the corner from why did you get solo killed there? You had no reason to. He's no longer that now, and I think that comes with maturity and trust in your teammates, that he will know when to step back now. And he got that 50% right before. Now he's getting close to 100.
So there's maturity in Caps, but also there's leadership in Perkz. I think Perkz is such a good leader.
This is your pick, right? So this is MVP for you as
Perkz,
right?
MVP. Like,
even though he fed his brains out on Yasuo?
Even though he did that, I still think he was effective. Like, it's a lot easier to be selfless. It's a lot easier to be mature when the most senior member on your team is all that. And I think there has to be given credit to G2's clutchness, G2's team culture, G2's just environment they provide for the team to Perkz. He's the one like leading the culture.
And I think of 80 carries who have been more than just kind of like Red Dot Simulator amazing team fighters. And the player that got the most credit for being a bit different from the 80 carry was Prey for a long time. He was a shot calling initiator 80 carry in a world of, he had great mechanics, but his strong
eyes of the world,
exactly. He was a very different player, right? Yeah. He would be in the right spot. He would be making the intelligent move. And I think history will smile on Perkz as a player who role swapped and makes it so like, if you're on red side against G2, it feels like you're on blue side against teams that are great counter pickers because, you're sitting there and they draft a whole load of crap on the blue side. You don't know where it's going, and you're like seriously, like why does this guy's champion pool have to include mages? And you get super frustrated at dealing with that. And red side, they'd pick blue side always for a reason. And I think the Perkz, if they go on to win, and they're the Grand Slam team, only team ever to win everything, you add a couple more years, like he could be remembered as the greatest player of all time in many years' time.
Over Faker?
It's that
He
weird
means in a
thing
few
to think.
years if they win more.
Not now, obviously. I'm not
The
going to
resume is match.
But like before, it was like, don't you even dare to say another name? You know, Monte was probably the closest in the conversation.
Maybe like Loco,
and then
sure.
do this for another 2 years, and then suddenly you're building a similar level of resume, and that's a Western player, and it's someone who I had
it's pretty early to say that.
No, agreed. But like, I had the privilege
we see the trajectory.
of
It is
seeing him in
possible, for
2016
sure.
as the young player on G2.
Trying the G2 vacation.
So many of the tournaments I've cast, he's been at. And to see his development of coming from kind of that 17-year-old wonder kid on the G2 roster into growing and now, you know, making the very selfless decision to play AD carry and warping the meta in his way and being credited so much for kind of the shot calling and the veteranship, even though he's not an old guy, he's like 20, 21. It is early to say, and like people can clip it, and it's like, oh, PaPaSmithy's superlative here.
No,
but
I think it's a good prediction.
They are one best of 5 away from winning the Grand Slam as a player who's redefining his role. Only history can we know how good a player he is in a top 3, top 5 rank.
It's a bit like another thing that people won't want to accept, but it's real, is if G2 wins this tournament, like there already was the discussion, is Caps the best player in the world? Like the discussion here would be, was a Western player just the best player the entire year? Like a Korean never even got a look in. That would be a real discussion we have to have.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
Is G2 the best team of all time?
Let's
Also
actually
gonna be an interesting question.
Yeah.
Let's talk about finals. Let's start discussing the finals matchups and do our predictions. But let's start by looking at some player comparison statistics that Microsoft provided, so we can look at sort of world stats for several matchups. Starting with the mid lane, DoA and Caps. Obviously, Caps here with a lesser win rate thanks to DoA absolutely styling in the quarters on Rise. So anything that sticks out to you guys at all here?
I think the stats across the board are pretty comparable. An extra 20 assists on Caps, but you know, an extra 16 kills on DoA. So those are some things I'm seeing there.
I'm actually impressed by the assists on Caps.
Yeah, he's actually ahead, 90
pretty impressive. You'd expect DoA to be higher for that, wouldn't you?
But I mean, the 16 kills, right, that he would have been involved in. So it's like, it's kind of hard to do the math there. But these two players, I would say, at this tournament have been much more backseat facilitator role for Caps than expected. And then for DoA, some really bloodthirsty games where his kill score has actually backed up his reputation in terms of just hard carry games. So it's almost like the nameplates are flipped in some ways.
The funny thing is, what I actually like about Caps in terms of like the strength he brings to G2 is another thing that makes G2 very weird is in the past, I always considered it a strength of teams that they have an obvious flaw, because what it means is everyone sort of understands like who we're going to play through, which areas are going to get the strengths, how do you cover up a weakness. It just becomes it becomes telegraphed to even the opponent and your team. Whereas in this team, one of the things that could cost you, it's what screwed basically every super team in history, is you have to have the real discussions where you sit down and decide, right, who is getting the pick this game and who is it going to run through? And normally, that kills a team. Well, in their team, they literally somehow have engendered this experience where all of them are so selfless. It's like they understand, I'm not supposed to like force things my way unless it's just my turn to carry. And so if, as a result, as you're saying, Caps in theory might be the best player in the world, and he has games he's just chilling, letting someone else carry, but then when he gets his pick, then he does just take over like he is. So, like, there's never been a team in history was like that. Every other great player in history, Uzi, Faker, like, there's a reason you run everything through them. And
like even
it's even
Samsung
the right
White had like Looper in the top lane, for example. So I completely agree with you. And that's the thing is like, if you ever think that you can skill check these players, you're very often going to be very disappointed with the results. So if the meta like went a further way away and we got back to the Akali Aurelia days, like we know the Wonder and Caps can pop off on those. So it's almost like people are trying to wait out G2, you know, people who are naysayers, and it's like, what is this meta you're waiting for? Because I don't see them exactly. I'm scared.
Like, here's the joke I have. Say someone watched it now and they're a very naive, newer fan. They're like, right, well, we just need the team fight meta to go out. It's like, these guys are going to split push all day long. What are you talking about? Like, there is no, you're not waiting
That's
for
how they got to semis last year.
You're not waiting for an ideal meta. It doesn't come.
We'll shadow box these teams in a minute. Let's take a look at some more stats. The AD carry matchup, Perkz versus LWX. Obviously, you probably pretty heavily favor Perkz here. Interestingly, both undefeated on Kai'Sa coming in. But the Xayah stat, I mean, I think that Perkz played some really good Xayah games up against SKT. And then not only that, but he also has, the best mage, most meta-appropriate, let's say, mage picks for the bot lane as well.
So Perkz has the best Xayah at the tournament, and he also has the best Yasuo, and he's a damn good Kai'Sa also. Drafting versus this guy is impossible.
And guess what? You piss him off enough, and then these mages come out that you've played 5 to 10 games against in your whole career, and you're like,
Yeah.
So it is so hard to deal with Perkz.
Best Xayah, best Yasuo, the only player that can play Syndra bot lane. Don't tell me about Jackie Love Syndra. I saw that. That
Well,
did
it's
not
gone
look
now,
good.
so.
Yeah.
It's over. It's over now. But yeah, I think in terms of versatility, and we saw this in the SK Telecom series too, where he's popping off on Xayah. Okay, we'll just ban Xayah and Kai'Sa, and then guess what? Here comes the Yasuo-Syndra combination. So in the final game, even though he did struggle with it until the very end of the game, he still managed to be relevant, getting that quadra in the end. So it does seem very difficult to play the draft.
What do you actually think, though? Because I know earlier when I was mentioning that, you seemed like you were a bit out on that. You would defend LWX? You think he's a better player than I made out?
I think LWX is definitely a better player than you made out. Like, I don't think he's a world beater. I think he's talented.
That's my problem, though. He comes from China. If you're going to play ADC and come from China, you better know you have big expectations on your shoulders.
But it's such a different role to play ADC on a Doinby team than it is to play ADC on a different team. Like Uzi gets like 40% of CS from 15 to 30, and on this team, you're just waiting for a hard crowd control for you to combo off because. Like FPX versus IG, I know we're skipping over it, but it was literally IG picking winning lane split push champions, FPX playing high crowd control, and IG opting into every fight and losing because they just couldn't play the map well enough.
Randomly wandering into the jungle against a Fed Rumble and Kiana.
But LWX, I think, is the perfect AD carry for this team. Like, he's not overstayed, he's not kind of a monster, but he will commit and sometimes commit too much. The shotgun kind of name he has is appropriate because he'll pretty much take every R on Kai'Sa. And definitely his eyes were off on that in the very early group stage games, but I don't think he walked away from semis or quarters necessarily looking terrible by any means. I think he's warming up with the tournament, and he'll fulfill the role he needs, especially if he gets the Kai'Sa. It's just the problem there is that there is a world where like Kai'Sa is gone, like the Xayah you don't respect as much, and he doesn't necessarily have as many picks to back it up. Whereas with Perkz, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th champion, that the only champion that Perkz looked kind of vulnerable on was Ezreal in this tournament. He's not
a little bit too over-aggressive.
That's fair.
Hasn't been that great a pick generally.
Yeah, and he's not a god Ezreal by any means, but he tried to play it, with a plan.
So the last one that we have, I'm glad they saved it till now. I think this is the most relevant one coming to the finals, the jungle matchup. Because here's the one point I want to make. The reason why, aside from the fact I was a fan of them as a team, the reason why I'm sad we never got Griffin in the final against G2 is there's only one team. Here's the thing, Jankos himself in the groups had some bad games. Yeah. But there's only one team I've seen actually hold Jankos down, and that was Griffin. Like, they did track where he was at all times on the map. Tarzan actually had some pretty decent leads at times. Like, I thought that was the only team that made Jankos like a non-factor. So coming into this final, I said it coming in, I had very, very high hopes for TN coming into this tournament, partly because I know Doinby isn't some monster mid. I know he's like the main primary factor. So this guy, he's one of the people who could outshine Jankos. I believe it's possible.
And you look back at MSI, and the best jungler in that tournament didn't win. Like, Klid was wonderful in that tournament, but didn't go on. The best jungler wins this series, 100%.
It looks like it to me, yes.
Just because a lot of the players are playing around what they're doing.
So how much does the pick
I mean, on the day, not like on a tier list.
If you think the best jungler wins the tournament, TN's the better jungler.
Well, it depends. No, but
we haven't got to predictions yet. That's when it gets spicy.
You've actually just ruined it because I already know that Papa's going to pick FPX. But anyway, okay.
Really, you had to spell it out. Nicely done. Great host. Now continue on.
So, but this also depends a lot on the draft because one of TN's strengths has been that Kiana jungle, where he has like clearly been the best Kiana jungler, I think, in this tournament. So does that become like a necessary ban for G2 to take it away?
Well, G2 doesn't really play it.
Yeah.
So that's the interesting thing. We didn't get to touch on it on the SKT series, but G2 sucked with Kiana in groups. Jankos has 2 miserable Kiana games. They permabanned it versus Dom1 Gaming. And SKT opens up the series with the Kiana ban, and they struggle, they ban it, they ban it, they ban it. Finally, they have to open it up. G2 doesn't first pick it. It goes to Faker's hand. We get the whole Shaker meme. Like,
I mean, I think it's interesting how many more assists Tian has than Jankos here, which is significant, 77 to 110.
I mean, just look at the numbers, right? It's 155 kill involvements to 120, right?
Right.
So that's like 30 more kill involvements.
It's pretty impressive.
It's pretty insane. Now they play a very bloody style. They're not going to play 3 lanes.
But they played they played almost the same number of games, right?
Sure.
I was trying to think about
it's been all best of 5 have been 4 games.
Yeah, 4 games. But then also
G2 played 1 more game.
They played 1 more game
tiebreaker.
in the tiebreaker.
Yeah, okay.
Which means that Tian has actually done this on 1 fewer game.
Splice FPX also played a tiebreaker.
That's true.
That's true. Okay, so they did play the same number of games.
Same games.
It's really interesting because like champion pools here are going to be super intriguing given that Tian didn't pop off on the Lee Sin, but has been historically a pretty good Lee Sin. The thing I'll take away is like, I think it's a bait to try to play around with Qiyana against G2 because remember G2's in Europe. There will definitely be European teams willing to scrim them to get them a world championship for their region. Like, you know, normally when you're overseas, if it's both teams are overseas, no one's getting any scrims. I guarantee they're going to spend this week trying to get Qiyana into their champion pools in a better state.
Do you think that's advisable with how far
Champion's broken as hell.
I would just use it for Caps and Perkz. I would just play, I'll make mid the threat.
And G2, one thing they said after groups was, it's kind of a blessing, but we have too much gifts. So what kind of gift are we going to choose?
Blind pick, blue side, first pick, Qiyana, game 1 of the final. 100%.
So, interesting.
It's going to happen. So if you win with that, then you're going to get banned against you, not by SKT, who's dumb, but in this case, actually earn the ban. And then it's really spicy.
I think they made a decision not to play Qiyana after groups.
Oh, no.
They did make that decision.
But see, the reason why you say that is like, we remember C9, right, last year, where they had to ban Aurelia Kali because it wasn't in their champion pools. It's in, like, these guys play Braum jungle. Like, they're definitely going to have it in there.
My question to you would be, game 4, why not first pick Qiyana if it is that broken for G2?
Because they needed this week where their only job in scrims is to get Qiyana stage ready, to have it ready. And it's a surprise because we look at SKT and like, why the hell were you banning it against G2? They don't play it. They lost with it twice.
Or picking it and Faker.
And if you have a scrim advantage, because you actually can play scrims, and this is all speculation, don't have any interior information, but if I'm a European team, I want to give them the best chance to win for Europe. Just get Qiyana ready.
That blue side Qiyana, if it doesn't work, oh man, they're going to be so messed up in draft.
Let's transition anyway, since obviously you hinted earlier at something which I really want to talk about now, which is one thing I hate in the esports industry is when you have the conversations off air that you have on talk shows. Everyone's the bravest guy in the world. They all have a crazy pick for a winner and they think this guy's overrated. And what I always say to people is go on then, tweet it then. And when you find out they won't, it's like, well, they obviously don't really have like the conviction of their beliefs in that regard. So what I would say in this regard is, as you alluded to earlier, you're going to pick FPX actually. You're going to go against the grain. A lot of people, you know, said that was the real semi, G2SK, whoever wins out. So you're going with FPX. So give us some reasons then. I mean, it's presumably built into the Tian concept, right?
So World Finals are always short series, apart from one 5-game series that was epic. And it's one of those things where I look at FPX and how they won, and G2 and how they won. And like G2's early games needed a lot of work, right? And they're not necessarily known for the first 7-8 minutes of a game. And I think FPX play a very reliable style with high crowd control. They snowball well with that and play on the whole shorter games so far we've seen at this Worlds. And I look at that and say, if that G2 from this weekend plays against that FPX, G2 for sure lose that series based on their early games, because I think FPX will always play a reliable high crowd control style and be able to close games from it. They're not going to reinvent the wheel. And I think the counterpoint, the reason why G2 could be a very valuable prediction, like I don't think this is by any means like a 90-10, is that you look at a player like Doinby and you say, well, if we actually contain the duo lane bot side and they can't get Crisp also walking up, then it's a 2v2 and that's a different predicament, and Caps is a better button clicker than Doinby. And I get that counterexample, but FPX really, really know how to play this like flying V, 3-person, always attacking mid lane style. And to me, in a World Final, if that wins them game 1, I think the team that wins game 1 of a World Final wins like 99% of the time.
I think that a lot of that style, though, was predicated on IG's mistakes and why it was successful. Like, I look at that Rumble Qiyana game that we saw from FPX, and so much of that advantage was IG literally opting into close-range jungle fights in the early game that they should just never have taken. And I felt that so much of it was, I liked FPS's game plan to sort of shut down the Shy and try and contain him a little bit. But I'm not sure that, from what I saw from G2, that they're going to opt into those fights. If anything, they showed me that they're really, really good at avoiding those fights against SKT and then taking objectives anyway and making those trades. So like, I first off don't think that FPX is going to get those leads because I just don't think G2 is going to do the same dumb things that IG did.
And look, it's me saying I think it's going to go this way, you saying I think it's going to go that way, and there's empirical data on both sides, and especially the G2 side for the world audience is going to be, outside of China, much more well-known because the English audience for the LPL is lower. It's very much a value bet as to what you think will happen on the day, and I'm just saying I know what FPX want to play in game number one, and G2 will do some semblance of crazy thing against that. And I think just the weight of the massive audiences in a world final and so many fans being out there, and you're out of your comfort zone and some insane stage design and stuff like that. You lose that first game and you get rumbled so differently. You get really rattled so differently to if you're in the LEC studio. So I just see in my head that version of the final, and I'm very happy to be wrong because the Grand Slam for the first time is a banger thing, and I have many players on G2 that I know personally and think are great. I just, for whatever reason, I see the final where they lose.
Right, we have limited time now, so let's each get a prediction out, and then we'll go on to the memes and the calls and stuff like that. So, Loco, who's your prediction to win the final?
So I also have FPX. I think Wonder scared me a lot. Wonder scared me so much in the semis, the kind of performance that he had. In the Camille game, if Jankos didn't fish him out, he would have just gotten blasted open. Like that game, they would have lost just off of how Wonder laned in the first 5 minutes. And Gingun, on the other hand, played versus probably the best player at Worlds potentially in the Shy, and he had a stellar performance. All the performance or all the credit is going to Chris, Tien, and Doinby, but Gimgun had the hardest matchup, and he
had the thankless task as well, right? Of like, please don't die that much. Sword failed that task, and then Gimgun did a really good job.
So a little bit worried about the top side and the 3v3 things we talked about. One thing I am questioning though is Fnatic is a little bit of like mini FPX, and G2 dominated Fnatic almost every time they met. If G2
towards the end of the season, Fnatic still had a lot of really good early games.
They still did win the matches that mattered,
twice,
though.
Right?
Whenever it was the match that mattered, they always won.
Yeah. And yeah, so I'm going to lean slightly towards FPX. And I also agree very heavily with like the game one statement. I think just in general, winning game one and best of 5 is so powerful.
The bigger the best of 5, the more important game one is for sure.
Yeah.
What do you pick, Monte?
I think G2. Like I said, I think that IG opted into a lot of really weird scenarios. But I was, like I said, impressed with some of the drafts that we saw from Fun Plus Phoenix in that they had very specific strategies a lot of the time to get rid of the Shy in the game. But I don't know how you can target a single player on G2 in the same way that you could against the Shy, who you realize was doing a lot of the hard carrying, especially in the quarterfinal match that IG played.
The way I look at it is, you can't ban out G2. Impossible. Yes. They play so many different champions, so many different roles. So don't even try it. Ban the stuff that works against what you feel comfortable on. And FPX have such a great concept of what they are and what they're not. They'll never try to outskill you in ways. Like, we're not going to see anything other than hard crowd control mid laners, or maybe a Kled. Like, if there's a Kled, the Roar at the final is going to be amazing. Like, they know exactly what they are, and if they stick to that and G2 stick to that, holy crap, is it going to be an amazing
That's why, to me, it's rare I will use this angle because I'm not somebody who specializes in the draft, but I actually think this is a series where the draft will be so effective as to which the champion is. And the reason why is exactly what you're saying. Like, one of the things I think makes G2 unique in this tournament is most teams, even the good teams, had a set style and they played to their strengths, and that's what made them get this far in the tournament. G2, as we've talked about, at different times in the tournament have been a totally different team. Like, they have all the options that the other teams don't have. So they don't have to, like IG did, opt into the opposite strengths of your comp, for example. They can do whatever they want. They can show us denial as they showed us, not go into these fights. So for me, I'm going to take G2, and the reason why is I think actually, in light of the strengths G2 already have in the draft, I think the smartest approach, and I actually think this is what they will do, is they will specifically not ban power picks. They will ban to stop the comps that FPX wants to build.
So Nautilus.
And so in my opinion, you even take a couple of the champions out of those like comps, they get a lot worse. I know everyone in China probably thought the same thing, but the difference is they're not G2. But then they don't have 5 players who can flex everything. They can't play through every lane. So if FPX can win, I'll just tip my hat, but I think G2 is the better team.
All I'm saying is Doinby will find a new champion to stand
I hope we see it.
He will find a new one. He'll find it.
I will say the one reason I actually don't think it's like a clear-cut scenario is I do think that from watching FPX in the tournament, respect to them, they've had a great tournament, and actually coming into the tournament, the only 2 junglers I thought were better than Jankos was Tarzan and Tian, so I've got to give them a chance, certainly.
So a big thing about flex picks is it's so powerful in this format right now, because when you have band 4 and 5 and you don't know where things are going, you need to aim your bands at a roll to kind of squeeze them, but you can't squeeze it when you don't know where the first 3 champions are going. When they had that Gragas, Syndra, Yasuo, SKT's 4 and 5 band were worthless. And it's something that also played really well for FPX also. When they had Nautilus and they get squeezed in on the mid pick, guess what? Nautilus goes mid and a new support comes out. If they get squeezed on the support picks, Nautilus goes support and the new mid pick comes out. So
what's the new support that can go mid lane? That's the question. Got to try and find a new Anami mid. Just waving down
Also,
everybody.
can I just point out, just because I like to keep track of where Loco's at in his brain. So Loco has just already said, he actually said off camera, he thinks Perkz is like the MVP of the whole tournament. You know, he's the best he literally thinks he's the best ADC in the world. He's picking against him in the final. So in true Loco fashion, he's going against his own opinion.
No.
That's not going to be a problem to you?
Don't do this
The
to
best
me.
player in the world is going to be on the wrong side?
We talked about how important jungle is.
Right.
So who is the better jungler in the
See, I'm better
G2
than
versus
Dankos?
SKT
Yeah.
match?
Okay.
What?
Who is the better jungler in the G2 SKT match?
Clid was the better jungle, but
Classic Loco. He's done that again.
no.
He does it to himself. We don't even do this. Listen, we roast a lot of people. He does it to himself.
wait, the SKT G2 match was about macro. Clid was the better jungle, and it kept them in the game because Clid was the better jungle.
All right, that's fair.
But
Understand, Loco. We can't dunk on you if you don't throw the alley-oop first. That's your problem. You know,
and that's what makes him so compelling.
It does.
I don't think I'm contrasting by
Right.
saying Perkz is the best AD carry and potentially the
I'm just
best
bringing it
player.
up. Okay, so yeah, fair enough.
But FPX can be the better team, and the jungle role matters more.
All right.
Okay. Right.
Well, we got all our predictions in.
I didn't give a score. I think 3-1. It's a safe prediction, obviously, with
I
how many
think
3-1s
3-1
there is.
G2.
Yeah. Anyone thinking 5 games?
I think 3-1 makes sense for everyone, yeah.
World Finals never go 5 games.
Oh, if it does, it'd be so crazy.
we should
the
have
viewership
double-
would be
oh.
insane.
Hey, you've been seduced by the other side.
Funny thing is, I actually agree with Pap.
What do you mean, the original side of esports? Yes, I was seduced before I even came into League of Legends.
I even actually agree with Pap on the general principle that actually the real problem is in the finals, the team it's different for is the team that loses because the pressure when you lose, I think that is what destroys you, yeah. I don't think it affects like the winner in that scenario. So I agree, that's why it's very unlikely you get 5 games. Because the pressure on whoever's down 2-1 is like, man, that must be incredible.
But if there is a team that can actually play from behind,
G2?
I do think it's G2.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. So pimp yourself, Papa.
Hello, I'm Papa.
Yes.
Some people call me Big Papa. 100 Thieves GM. You can follow us at 100 Thieves. Hopefully we're going to have cool videos. We've kind of spoiled some of them, but...
Are you streaming?
Nope, not anymore. I'm keeping it quiet. I got lots of business to do in Monte Cristo, so...
The only thing is, can you tell your boy Afromu, like he's taken the branding part too far. Like, you're not literally supposed to steal checks. Like, you know, that's just part of the aesthetic. You know?
He nods. Nope. Not going to say anything.
All right, look at you. Hold on, okay, first test. There you go.
We'll see.
But yeah, follow us next year. Hopefully we'll have a story to tell. Whatever roster we end up with, the plan is be very clear and transparent with the fans, not just be beholden to wins and losses. That sounds like we're going to do something like that. None of that is decided, but we're just going to try and be internally consistent and lay it all to bear, and people can judge. That's how the way it goes.
Sounds great. Well, thank you.
We will
coming on.
judge. That's our job.
Have fun at finals.
It's going to be fun.
Should be good.
It's going to be fun. Paris crowd is the best.
Oh, yeah, it is really fun, I have to admit. From being there for League, it is a good time. Wish I could go, but unfortunately, we'll be here. Watching at 4 a.m., probably.
Lucky you.
All right. We got another part of On Cloud9 after this. Then we're going to review your memes for Puma gift cards and take pleb calls, our favorite/least favorite part of the show.
Yeah, that's the biggest question for me. MVP Svenskeren, where is he? I'm yet to see him. He was someone that I believe coming into the World Championship would be one of the best performing North American players, and I have very high expectations of him.
So I'm pretty sure we need to win at least 2 games to make it out, and possibly 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, we have to beat Griffin or we're out instantly. If we beat them and they beat G2, then we also have to beat G2, and then we also have to beat Hong Kong attitude no matter what. So it's a lot of winning. The first game's the most important, and then after that, we'll see.
And just to reiterate what I was saying, Cloud9 will want to win this game. If they lose, their destiny is no longer in their own hands.
Got access to his Raptors and Krugs.
We're here. Tarzan's behind the tower, Chovy looking for the wall dive, lands it, Cocoon's gonna follow up, and that is first blood to Griffin. They continue their vision control line, and they make C9 face check in. The quickness coming out here, Nisty's gonna pop his stopwatch, Paranoia trying to jump on the backline, Svenskeren gets a lot of damage down, but the Blade Core will pull through them. Featherstorm coming out as well, and look at the backline, Sneaky, Divine Judgment trying to survive for the moment, but Chovy and Sword are still putting in work. Nisky tries to flash away, just about escapes to live for the moment, but Licorice has been caught off towards the bottom side. Nisky will fall, Licorice will fall, fall. C9 will fall. They'll even take one under the towers for good measure. 7-0 to Griffin. It's a great look so far for Griffin. Zazel trying to get away. The Justice Punch won't allow him to escape, but here comes the paranoia. Maybe C9 have found a fight. Hexagon made him jumping onto the backline. Viper's already killed off Zazel, and there's the double. Svenskeren falls as well. Here comes Sword, slicing through C9. Their backline decimated, their team deleted. It's a clean ace for Griffin. You can see Sword is down towards the bottom side of this, keeping Licorice busy. Here comes the paranoia. The one punch has been thrown by C9, but they really don't have the damage to take down anyone. Griffin, Lehen's still alive. Viper there as well. They just clean them up. You can't even cast this. It is disgusting to watch. Dirty stuff from Griffin. No response from Cloud9. And Griffin just slam through the door. They break down the walls. They break down the defenses of C9. And they lay a stake on a spot in the quarterfinals.
Obviously, you can catch the full series on Cloud9's YouTube channel, which you should already be subscribed to because you came here to watch Summoning Insight as well. So we're going to talk about memes, which if you are in NA and over 18, you can win a Puma gift card. So we'll review some of them. I believe the first meme is again from a European, who are the better memers and League of Legends players, from Boavi, trying to participate, unfortunately. So, me, watching the official Riot talk shows with established casters, or watching Thorin rant about how puns are misexecuted, which is true, constantly.
That is the choice.
That is definitely the choice.
I think you made the right choice on that one, though. You know, normally the implication is like, is he making the right choice? Like, you made the absolutely right choice on there. Just ignore that frowny-looking person on the right there.
We're definitely the bad girl of
They seem a bit too
Legends.
uptight and serious on the right. The one on the left seems fun, you know. Like, hey, that's another life I could be part of, you know. So just saying, the branding works.
This photo actually has like a bunch, and in the end, like the two girls get together. So if it goes by the lore of the stock photos, then you'll work for Riot again.
I wasn't actually aware that, though, was it? He even knows the law of stock photos. That's true, actually. Apparently, I guess people have
Also, you say work for Riot again. He never worked for Riot.
Or him and Riot will like work together.
Just to show that Loco's not a pleb and just likes the law of everything. He knows the law behind that stock photo on the internet.
I love it. All right, let's go on to the next one. The actual contenders.
Okay.
So how do we beat FPX? Fnatic says, Yuumi, Garen, Rengar top, ban Rise. Course,
the real
right
joke the real joke there would be this. I'll improve your meme, right? On the middle panel, you get the guy saying ban Rise, and instead that's Nemesis's face, and he just says better mid wins, and at the end they throw him out the fucking window because that was absolute nonsense. That's not at all how you beat FPX. That would be a better meme, you know. I think that would actually improve that meme. It's not a bad one though.
That's not a bad one. So good job,
that
John.
Was a really weird angle that they thought banning Rise somehow disables Doinby. Like, I don't know if you followed Doinby's career, but he's not really just picking the power.
Well, no, they didn't ban Rise. That was the problem.
That's what I mean. Like, why would that even be the big deal? Yeah?
All right, we go to the next one. Milos Towson. Okay, double lift. Captain of Team Liquid, stepping up after group stage concluded to display what it means to be a captain and leader of an organization. Meanwhile, Reckless, WTF, my team, trash. Drama, drama, drama. I thought everyone on the team was playing really, really well. Double lift tanking the arrows.
The small kid should be Jensen. Then that meme would have been perfect. And then there should be another one where like the big guy is holding up the small kid, and then that's Fnatic, and then the small kid is just getting wrecked by the arrows.
There you go.
And who is the kid holding up Fnatic?
No. He's like the big guy is Reckless, and he's sacrificing Broxa or whatever.
Yeah, the joke would be he'd sacrifice his whole team. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think you mean on that one.
All right, that's not bad.
That was all right.
All right, let's go to the next one. Matthew Siddle, Thorin telling Loco to shut up about stupid shit. Loco just tried to share game knowledge. It's true.
Whenever I try to share game knowledge or lore on things, like just background information that people might enjoy, it's like, just shut up. No one cares about this stuff. I'm like, okay, I just want to participate.
I mean, it seems accurate. I like this one. So which one? Out of these, yeah, that's the last one. Which of these three do you guys like?
I think I would vote the first one, maybe. I'm not sure. This one was tougher, actually.
I like this last one.
This last one was not bad. I don't mind.
Oh my god.
I like the one where Loco is actually, sympathetic in this meme. I feel like Loco has been unsympathetic.
In theory, he's the hero of this meme.
Exactly.
Normally, he's the joke. Yeah, of course.
He's the hero of this meme, just trying to do his best.
You could let him be the hero.
For this episode, I thought we were just going through it great, and at the end, Thorin had to call me out about calling Perkz the best player while still thinking Tian's the best jungler. I was like, man, this was a great show, and then we get to the meme section. It never ends.
we're trying to help you, Loco.
Also, if people knew how much you were being paid to get slammed in memes, they wouldn't have a lot of sympathy for you. For that way, mate. If they actually were aware of the behind the scenes that's going on here, I'm just saying, it's worth it. Put it that way, it's worth it.
I do put on a very good act of being.
You were very impressed. And of course, this.
That one wins. Whoever made that wins.
We're not going to give. We're not going to give it to DoA, but his excellent.
Oh, it was DoA's. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, DoA's photoshopping of Loco Doco. By the way, Loco, the fact that you aren't literally printing merch with this is sad. You should definitely do that, and also animate it so it's your subscription.
Yeah, of course. So when someone subscribes, that should appear on.
Yes, the little flapping wings, right?
I want to reinvent myself. Not go back.
Well, you tried it once. Look, this is what you used to look like.
Yeah, you already did.
What are
you talking about?
I think you did a great job. It used to be rubbish. That guy just looks like some edgy anime weeb, doesn't he?
My Chemical Romance is back. But that was those
That's
days.
right. Okay. Bring it back. Anyway, we'll go with you, Matthew Siddle. All right, thanks for sending in your memes. It's been fun to see you guys and give you Puma gift certificates. We're gonna take a very brief break so I can set up the Discord on the surface for your calls, so be back in 30 seconds.
The enemy jungler. Think of him like a bad roommate. Attacking teammates when they're most vulnerable. Raiding camps and taking what's yours. That's why Cloud9 have partnered with Microsoft. Using their technology, they can study the enemy jungler's movements, identify patterns, and change the game. Good luck, junglers.
Opened in Algenend.
Hello. Welcome to Pleb Calls, where we talk to plebs. So we're going to talk to some plebs right now. The first pleb, we've already talked to this guy before, actually. It's Galloping Sumo.
What was his question last time? Do you remember who he was?
I don't remember.
I don't remember that.
Hello, Galloping Sumo. Please, regale us with your questions.
Hello, guys. Yeah, so my question is going to be Perkz, the esports Player of the Year award. Not going to say he should win it because I haven't really made a short list, but if he wins Worlds, obviously he's achieved the Golden Road. I think we should give it to Perkz specifically on this team because he's the captain of the team. A little bit of context as well. Last year it was given to Sonic Fox. He was given it because he played multiple games in the genre of fighting games, and this is being Perkz' second and revolutionized the role, so I feel like he should definitely be considered.
I'm confused. Did Perkz really? Did Sonic Fox win PC Player of the Year?
No. It would have been Console Player of the Year.
Oh, I see.
But yeah. He's just saying it's a
that's
comparable.
Context, right?
All right, thank you.
I didn't think that was true.
So, you and I are both on the committee for the Esports
I have
Industry
one problem
Award.
already with his premise, basically. So the first thing in his premise that I have an issue with is he said, and Perkz is the captain, etc. For me, as an individual
Ford
player
was the
award,
captain for Griffin.
Well, the problem here basically is for an individual award, unfortunately, I don't think actually things like being a captain, because no one can really know. We can't really know what you did as a captain. We're just guessing. I don't think that should factor into and basically, in my opinion, Player of the Year is just best individual player in the game. That's the real name of that topic.
Which you're there is competition this year, not to go into this too much, but Simple has obviously had an absolutely
There's a bunch of
incredible,
people,
absolutely
I think it's one of the most
year.
wide open years for the actual
Sinatra?
award.
No, I wouldn't say Sinatra, just because at least in Overwatch League, Sinatra was the MVP, but he wasn't the MVP of the playoffs. He was sort of subbed in and out as the meta changed. So obviously a fantastic player, but I don't think he was at the level of Simple or Perkz. I think Perkz is a contender for sure, though.
Well, the funny thing for me is, I don't mind someone putting Perkz in there. He's certainly one of the names from League that deserves to be there. I also wouldn't be mad if someone from the same team, Caps, was on there. I think he's another person you can absolutely put there. This guy's gone head-to-head with the absolute best players in the entire world, and he is one of the best players himself. He would be a contender right now for best player in the world, Caps, so he's got to be on your list. Well, I wouldn't mind the Shy even. I might be a little bit of recency bias, to be fair. I guess for the year, maybe he had his down times.
I have to lean Perkz over Caps. I think Caps' job and what Caps does is amazing, but Perkz just does so much for the team, and the task that was put in front of him was much harder than it was for Caps.
I also think Perkz was the bigger contributor to the MSI win, if we're looking at the entire year. So I mean, I think we'll definitely be having that conversation depending on G2's results going forward. But thank you. Interesting question. Hello, Freedom Phantom. What is your question?
Hello. Hello. So, this season we saw the mid lane priority rising in importance as being able to react first to a play before the enemy laner. And also the supports are roaming a lot more to impact the map. My question is, if we take this into consideration, why doesn't the support actually play with mid with the laner instead of bot lane? Wouldn't the support playing in the mid lane help with mid priority and make his roams and map control more impactful?
The problem here is basically the way that XP works in the game, right?
Exactly.
So that's like, so who can explain that? I'm sure.
So basically, the reason why the meta developed the way it did in League of Legends is because typically AD carries are less level reliant, more item reliant, and mid laners are more level reliant and less item reliant. So what the support does, and especially with support items, is assist the AD carries in terms of getting gold, or make sure that they don't have to back as frequently, protect them a little bit in the lane, provide heals, provide shields, so they can stay there and farm longer. So effectively, you'd kind of be gimping your mid laner, but I'm not sure that that is entirely true anymore. That's the original reason.
So follow-up question. Why doesn't bot lane go mid lane and have AD
That has happened in
support
the past.
mid, and mid laner just go bot lane?
Well, you get pushed in.
Riot artificially made it so for the first 5 minutes, mid lane and top lane have increased armor, and it's harder to take those turrets. And bot lane doesn't have that increased armor buff, so it's easier to take bot lane turrets.
Also, you'd just be denied farm in the 2v1, which would be a trade that you would make, obviously, because you'd be denying the enemy mid laner. And to be fair, over the history of League of Legends, we have seen this happen. It's not like we haven't seen games start with like a mid laner.
The real reason, unfortunately, why you can't do it is that it's a knock-on, unintended consequence of Riot not wanting lane swaps. That's what they changed the game basically to stop. So the problem is the best way to make no lane swaps is incentivize the AD carry duo to the bot lane to go to the bot lane. So they've made that happen, unfortunately. So in the old version of League, in theory, you could do that. It's just it wouldn't be as good still. You know?
Yes.
Basically, that's why they only do it in the funnel meta. Because in the funnel meta, you do only care about getting gold onto that one carry anyway. So in that scenario, everyone becomes the ADC who's in the mid then, you know.
Because Duncan mentioned funnel, like all the funnel, 2v1 stuff, all these like competitive, unique lane setup, Riot hates it. Riot wants your solo queue game to look as much as the competitive game as possible.
Sure.
So that's why we have things this way. It's because Riot wants it this way.
Yeah, which is why I was unhappy when they changed lane swaps, because I thought it was actually a very interesting strategic decision, but because everyone else hates it because it literally was never seen outside of the professional level, even in challenger level solo queue, you weren't going to necessarily see lane swaps at that level because of the teamwork it took was so crazy. And it was sort of like a flow chart that you had to know as a pro player. So yes, there are a lot of reasons, but I agree with Loco. It's because literally the game has been balanced this way now.
So Riot's competitive scene for Riot is like, we can talk about esports and the good it does, but it is a big advertisement tool for League of Legends, the game. And when the advertisement does not look like the actual product itself, the one you play, then there's a problem.
This is one area, by the way, where I would say you see the difference in design philosophy between Riot with League and Valve with Dota. Because in a game like Dota, thinking like that at least could go somewhere. Like, it's not inhibited in the game. Like actually, that even famously did happen in Dota. If anyone's never followed Dota 2, Dota 2 has actually almost never had the same setup of League, of role distribution that League has, because actually years and years ago, they figured out this tri-lane approach that was like just way more effective. So in a game like that, you would potentially, depending on what players you have, maybe you could make that work. League, unfortunately, as we see, Riot essentially reverse engineers what they want. In theory, it doesn't always work, but they try to.
Yep. All right, let's go to the next call. Isa Baba, hello, what's your question?
Hi, Monte. So analysts like Vedius and LS are taking a lot of heat this weekend. Vedius from having a clip saying that SKT played better in the semifinal, and LS from predicting that IG and SKT were going to win their semifinal matches.
Okay.
An analyst's job is to look at teams' historical performance and using draft as a measure to see if they win. But do you think that the community's shunning of analysts is pushing for a bad environment for other analysts?
Oh, let me answer this one, because I'm also an armchair analyst. An analyst's job is to make accurate predictions and engage the community and educate the community. But also for a lot of the analysts outside of the community, it's very important to get eyes on you. And I actually don't think it encourages people whenever like Vedius is on front page of Reddit for making a comment, whenever LS is on front page of Reddit for making a comment. It's actually really great for
those people analysts. Care about what they say. They're interested.
So
I also disagree with the thing where you say it's important for an analyst to make correct predictions.
I actually think that's irrelevant.
I actually think it is totally irrelevant to make a correct prediction because the idea is you are presenting a thought process of how you arrived at that prediction, which then you can alter going forward. So you could be completely wrong,
Yes.
but if you're like, oh, but I learned this about the team, you're still providing insight, right?
Like, here's the distinction, Loco. To me, I know what you mean by that. Like, obviously, your job is to give a prediction, for example, and to give hopefully the most accurate one. Yeah, in theory. But the problem with that is the way you phrased it might make some people think you can judge someone based on whether they got the prediction right.
My prediction was shit.
Yeah, but my principle would be like this. The reason why it's actually inherently bizarre to expect analysts to be able to predict the future is their whole job is actually telling you what happened in the past, not what's happening in the future. Like, the job of the analyst now is, from all the past games I've seen of FPX, here's how they will probably play, how they might attack that. But in the end, I can't actually know what they will do in the final exactly. So, like, for example, the time you will end up being the most strong is when someone does something revolutionary no one's seen before. So
exactly, but that's what's cool, because even if you are in the match and you see something new, you could say, oh, wow, I've never seen this before.
And they never
Who
mentioned it
could
on
have
the
predicted
disc,
it?
Yeah, exactly.
So now we're seeing something entirely new, and that increases hype. So I think in general, though, what we saw, like, whatever. Also, people take quotes mad out of context because it's like Reddit or whatever. I do think that LS probably went a little bit too far with some of his like comparisons between LCK teams and G2 earlier this year. I think that was pretty extreme.
I'll use the actual comments they made, though. In terms of VDS's comment, first of all, as he himself pointed out, that was a snippet out of a massive VOD review, which I'm sure contained a lot more information and shading. And again, remember, this is something you must always remember with clips. He didn't know you were clipping that exact 30 seconds. Like, all the hours he was talking, he didn't know his entire VOD review judged on the 30 seconds there. Otherwise, he probably said it differently. So what I'll say is this. I will say I did disagree with the premise of what he said only in that clip. Like, essentially, if it's between him and LS, I think LS was correct in as much as the idea that, like, it was... When people said that SKT had leads, they did in the objective sense of the gold lead, the number of the barons.
They never had a pressure lead,
they never had, like, a true lead in the sense of, like, who should win this game right now if you paused it. So LS is right in that regard. Like we said before, to me, I thought the read was SKT even came in thinking they had to get the early leads, which is why they drafted that way. So to me, when they do that, when they do draft that way, and even then they only have, like, small leads, that's not actually enough. Like, that's like you kind of almost just held serve there. I think they should have done a better job of getting the big leads if they wanted to even do that. So to me, they weren't really leading that much. That was a bit, maybe that clip just wasn't in the context that he intended. I don't know.
I talked about SKT playing with the formula. Their formula for how to get a lead was correct, but what to do once they have a lead, that formula was incorrect. Like, what they wanted to do after Baron was just so wrong.
I'll also say, by the way, just because I also like to add this context, and I always tell the analysts this as well, as much as I'll totally sympathise with an analyst who's like, I'm getting wrecked, or like they're taking what I said out of context. With all of that said, let's be real. The literal most appropriate place for stupid fan theories and hot takes and dissing people is Reddit and Twitter. That's where the fan should go and give his opinion. Like, I'm definitely not one of those people who's like, don't hit on analysis. Give your opinions. That is what it's for. That is what Reddit and Twitter are for. Like, you're allowed to do that totally. Don't let the fact that people don't like when he says mean things about them mean like the concept's wrong. I think on both sides, I would defend both sides. The public has a right to judge whatever they want, and the analysts, whether they get wrecked by the public or not, should have the validation that they did a good job themselves. Like, I think both people can feel comfortable with what's going on.
Also, the thing for analysts, like, the worst thing that the public can do to them is not call someone stupid, is no comment. If you ignore them, just don't act like they exist.
Well, I mean, that's the famous Oscar Wilde quote, which is the only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about. So, you know, in some way, if you're dominating the conversation, you are in fact doing something right. All right, guys, that's going to end our calls. That's going to end the Nines Summoning Insight presented by AT&T. Thank you very much to Cloud9. We will be back next week with a show discussing many of the aspects of BlizzCon and the announcements that were made there on the usual format of the Nines. Will be at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. You can find, if you just tuned in, you can find this VOD on the Cloud9 YouTube channel. We'll also be putting it up on podcasting platforms, so be aware that we will be doing that. If you like this content, you know what you should do? I think you should tweet at Cloud9 and tell them that you really enjoy this and you want to see it back. And maybe we'll be doing something in the future. So thank you guys very much. Really appreciate you coming to watch Summoning Insight. We had a lot of fun doing it for Worlds this last month. Maybe we'll have a little bit of a surprise for you coming up a little bit later, but we're still working that out. In any case, thank you very much. Have a good night.
I'm not crazy, I'm just Loco. What a rubbish.